Risen Enemy by Matt Edsand. Narrated by Matt Edsand. Chapter 1 Springfield, Eastern Plains. Lieutenant Miles walked down the main street of Springfield. The clear blue skies added a spring to his steps. He passed by a few local folks who smiled at him. Miles returned the smile. He had been deployed with his unit to this town since the beginning of last month. At first, Miles had been confused about his unit's deployment. There was no danger to Springfield, and it was far from the front lines of their conflict with the coalition forces. What could possibly happen in this town? Miles stopped at the local hardware store and peered through the windows. Quite a crowd inside the store. No surprise there. After all, it was a Saturday. Over the last few weeks, Springfield had grown on him with its charm, but Miles had remained on alert. He had heard rumors from the United Alliance base. One rumor said that the United Alliance had lost its solitary space station in orbit. The rumor also said it had been an attack, but no one knew who had done it. The men and women in his unit had been talking about it the last few nights. At first, Miles had let them voice their concerns, but after a while he had put an end to the chatter. The last thing he wanted was for his unit to indulge in rumors. There was no end to it, and it didn't benefit anyone. He understood that General Duncan would inform everyone once the truth had been established, which had led to the second rumor making the rounds. General Duncan had left the base to visit Henderson with Captain Arria. That was out of the norm. Even Miles had to admit it, but it had to be related to the destruction of the space station. General Duncan rarely took a personal interest in a mission. His reason for leaving the base must have been important. Miles hoped the general would eventually clear the air instead of letting all this chatter gain momentum. His comms came alive. Lieutenant? It was his superior, Captain Thomas. Yes, sir. What's the status in Springfield? Thomas asked. Nothing unusual to report, sir. Miles wasn't surprised by the sudden comms from Thomas. Captain Thomas had been communicating with him on and off ever since his unit had been deployed to Springfield. How's your unit? Thomas asked. They've been taking shifts watching over the town, Miles replied. He didn't want to add that a few of his soldiers had begun to get bored. The first week had been exciting, getting accustomed to the town. His men and women had enjoyed being outside of a base. Miles had permitted it again for a short while. Then he had put his foot down. He didn't want his men and women getting into any problems with the locals. Miles had ensured they were at their barracks at the designated times. He demanded a certain level of discipline from his unit. Even though they were in Springfield, there was a grinding conflict going on where many soldiers were dying on either side. That's good, Lieutenant. Keep me informed if you notice anything. We've noticed unusual things going on recently. With that, the comms ended abruptly. Unusual things? That was a weird way for Captain Thomas to end the conversation. Despite that, there was nothing Miles could do about it. Miles tried to decipher the meaning behind the words from his captain. He didn't get it. It didn't matter. He just needed to be on alert. It was only then that Miles realized he was standing still on the sidewalk. A few locals gave him strange looks as they passed him by. He ignored their looks and resumed his walk. Then his gaze fell upon a figure walking across to the other side of the road. Miles narrowed his eyes. The figure was wearing a raincoat. Miles looked up at the sky. There wasn't a single cloud to be seen. Miles turned his attention back to the raincoat figure. The figure was gone. Miles blinked. He walked onto the middle of the road, dodging the oncoming vehicles. He raised his hand as he crossed and reached the other side of Main Street. His eyes scanned up and down the sidewalk. Where had the raincoat figure gone? Something about the raincoat figure bothered him. Miles couldn't put a finger on it, but he sensed the raincoat figure was a threat to the community. Then he spotted the figure a distance down the road. The raincoat figure had stopped and was staring at a coffee shop. Miles then recognized one of his men standing closer to the figure. He opened the comms to Private Reynolds. Sir, Reynolds, don't move. But do you see a raincoat figure standing a few steps from you? Miles asked. Miles slowly continued to creep forward, waiting for his man to reply. Yes, sir, Reynolds replied. I want you to follow him slowly, but do not under any circumstances engage with him. Is that clear? Miles noticed that the raincoat figure had begun to walk again. Reynolds then slowly turned and followed. The number of people on the sidewalk was slowly growing. Miles had learned that on Saturday the crowds tended to swell as the day went on. Many of them were older folks and younger families. Even teenagers began to roam about over the weekend. Initially, it took him some time to get used to all the different types of people. Miles began to increase his pace, weaving through the crowds. Then he lost sight of Reynolds and the raincoat figure. Miles broke into a sprint as he waved for the people to get to one side. A few people shouted at him, but he ignored them. Reaching one end of Main Street, Miles stopped. An alleyway branched to his right. Miles drew his weapon and stepped into the alleyway. The moment he stepped in, his jaw dropped. Reynolds was on the ground. Miles raced to his man and knelt beside him. Reynolds was dead with a chest wound. A sound reached Miles' ears. He turned to face the left side of the alleyway. A bright light stood a short distance from him. Then, to his shock, the light began to race towards him. How was that possible? Miles lifted his weapon, but it was too late. Something slammed against him. He tried to scream, but nothing came out of his mouth, and he blacked out. Chapter 2: Unknown Position, Wiley Forest. Captain Williams realized he had been staring at the United Alliance base for a few minutes. The alien they had been hunting had supposedly disappeared into the base. He was still irritated with the existence of the base. His intelligence-gathering personnel were becoming complacent. That's the only conclusion he could come to. If not, he should have been informed of this United Alliance base. For it to exist at the edge of Wiley Forest was an escalation by the United Alliance. It appeared that the United Alliance didn't seem afraid of setting up their bases closer and closer to coalition forces' territory. Is this from where that soldier had been sent out to spy on us? Lieutenant Kane asked. What do you think? It was even possible that many more soldiers had been running surveillance on his coalition forces base for some time now. Such lapses were unacceptable. Do you think the United Alliance and the aliens are working together? Kane asked. It sounded ridiculous to even entertain the thought, but they were in the thick of a conflict with the United Alliance. Nothing was off the table. We need to determine that. What if the alien entered the base to attack them like it did with our base? Kane asked. Williams frowned. We should then soon hear an explosion or something. Shouldn't we warn them? Williams paused for a long moment. He didn't know how to even answer his lieutenant's question, but Williams had to admit it was a dilemma. We can't just walk up to their base. They might shoot at us. Kane offered a single nod. I know, sir. Despite that, Williams couldn't sit back and let an alien kill other humans, even if those humans were soldiers that belonged to the enemy. That didn't sit right with him. What do you suggest? Kane was taken aback by his question. Williams suppressed a chuckle. He wanted to test his lieutenant in this situation. He doubted Kane had ever been shown this kind of scenario back during his military training days. Lieutenant, Williams growled. Kane hesitated. We don't have many options. The most direct one is the quickest. We don't know what the alien is doing inside the base. What if it turns out that the alien is working with the United Alliance? I find that hard to believe. I doubt the alien cares about humanity. Williams got to his feet and dropped his weapon. Sir, we can't stay out here and let the alien do whatever it wants. We're going into the base. Kane arched his eyebrows. Unarmed? The way I see it, the choices are simple. Either we go to them unarmed or we head back to our base. Going to the United Alliance base armed was suicidal. No sane person would be able to do it and survive. Nonetheless, the chances that the enemy might fire on them was evenly split. Kane stood beside Williams and dropped his weapon and grenade belt. I don't like this. Your objection is noted. Move out. Williams took the lead, marching to the edge of the forest. Reaching the edge, the high fence of the United Alliance base came into his view. No turning back now. He crept forward out of the forest and headed for the main gate. As soon as they were meters from the gate, two soldiers rushed out and leveled their weapons at them. Williams raised his hands and Kane followed. We're unarmed. One of the soldiers hollered, Don't move. Williams stood still. We want to talk to the base personnel in charge. Both United Alliance soldiers exchanged glances. Then one of them began talking through his comms. Williams was about to find out whether this had been a good idea or not. Chapter 3, General's Office, United Alliance 1. General Duncan switched off the comms. He had tried to make a call to his brother, Captain Williams. However, the person on the other end of the comms had informed Duncan that Williams was not available. Duncan had then been forced to leave a message with his contact number. Suffice to say, the person on the other end had been quiet for a few moments after he realized who Duncan was. It wasn't every day a general from another faction called in. Duncan was certain word would spread throughout the coalition forces of his call. Despite that, Duncan needed to get in contact with his brother. Duncan had amplified the urgency to the soldier. He hoped that the soldier on the other end of the call had taken note of it. Duncan hadn't spoken to Williams in years, not after their falling out. However, over the years he had learned that his brother had enlisted with the coalition forces. The first time a friend of his father had told Duncan about it, he had been speechless. Initially, Duncan had thought his friend had made a mistake. It didn't sound like Williams would enlist, but once Duncan confirmed it through his sources, he had been fuming. How dare his brother join another faction? Their father had been aligned with the United Alliance for decades, and he had hoped both his children would follow in his footsteps. Loyalty was one thing their father had instilled in them from a young age. But it seemed like his brother Williams didn't seem to care about loyalty. Eventually, Duncan had dismissed his frustrations with his brother. Williams was an adult and he could do whatever he liked. Duncan wasn't interested in getting in the middle of it. It also wasn't like he was going to ever talk to his brother. Williams had been quite clear of it when he had left the family. But the world works in mysterious ways. In the unlikeliest situations, the appearance of an alien from another planet had brought Duncan back to his brother. Of all people and of all times, there was a knock at his door. "Come in," Duncan said. The door slid open and Captain Arya walked in a bit flustered. "What happened?" Duncan said. He knew from Arya's expression that something was wrong. "Sir, we got a report just in from Springfield." "Go on." Ever since Duncan had returned with Captain Arya from their visit to the facility where Eddie had worked, he had done a survey of all the towns surrounding his base. There were over 10 towns near his base. Duncan had been surprised by the sheer number of them. He briefly recalled that Springfield was among the list of towns. The report indicated that there was an incident out in the town. What kind of incident? "2 of our men are dead. One of them is Lieutenant Miles, who oversaw a unit deployed to Springfield." Duncan furrowed his brows. Did the enemy attack the town? It was an unlikely scenario, but then again, with the conflict, nothing could be discounted. Nevertheless, Duncan had the feeling this incident had nothing to do with the coalition forces or any other faction. Arya frowned. The report didn't specify the attackers. Duncan slammed his fist on the table. "What kind of report is that then? I need to know the details." "I already ordered the details to be sent directly to my device." Duncan leaned back on his chair. "What's your assessment?" "It could be the work of an alien." Duncan raised one eyebrow. "The raincoat figure?" Arya nodded. "But we need proof. Did the incident report say if anyone saw anything?" "It stated that 2 civilians came across the dead bodies in an alleyway. They then reported it to the Springfield local police, who informed our unit." Then Arya pulled out her device. "I'm getting images of the bodies. Sir, you need to see this." Arya then passed the device to Duncan. All it took was one glance. The purple discoloration around the wounds was enough for him. "Okay, we need to go." "I've already prepared the transport pod," Arya said. A mischievous smile crawled over Duncan's expression. Chapter 4, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. Lucas leaned back on a chair in front of one of the consoles. His fingers tapped on the console. He had just finished listening to his father talk about the Vezat alien species. Prior to his father's sharing, Lucas hadn't been able to guess what the Vezat was all about. He had mulled over several possibilities, but none of them had even been close to his father's mind-blowing revelation. I still can't believe it, Glenn remarked. The wizard is an alien race. Lucas frowned. He was also still trying to process everything. But things slowly began to make sense about the light that hit the shuttle. It had alien origins. The realization that we aren't alone on this planet changes everything, Glenn said. The factions have been fighting for years, all because of their beliefs. And now we find out that there are other species in the galaxy that have come here to our planet. Lucas shared his VP's sentiments. It was a humbling experience to face a new reality. Earth was only one planet in the galaxy. His father's story of the wizard opened many more questions. Where had the wizard come from? Why were they here? His father hadn't been able to provide any answers. The fact that your father spoke to one of them is shocking, Glenn continued. That part of the story had taken Lucas's breath away. Not the meeting part, but the part where his father had been able to keep the secret buried with him for years. He met them 30 years ago, Lucas stated. Glenn cocked his head. I don't understand. Lucas felt there was no need to hide the reason he had come out to Gibson Desert in the first place. He wasn't like his father. He had no intention of keeping secrets buried. He then shared with Glenn on the destruction of the United Alliance space station. Glenn whistled. Now that you tell me that, it must be the wizard. We can't jump to conclusions. Why not? Isn't it obvious? My father never insinuated a danger to us from the wizard. As you said, the space station being blown up 30 years to the day isn't something we can simply dismiss. Glenn protested. You need to inform General Duncan as soon as possible. Who knows what the aliens could be up to around here? Glenn was starting to come off the hinges. Finding out that aliens are roaming about was no doubt unnerving. Most people would panic and start screaming. But Lucas was not most people. Chalk it up to his father's incessant training. Lucas needed to remain calm. I'll inform the general. He pulled out his device and sent a message to Duncan. Sir, I found something else, Glenn announced. Lucas got to his feet and walked over to Glenn, who was standing over another console. What is it? Glenn jabbed a finger at a blue button with the words weapons inscribed on it. Lucas didn't hesitate and pressed on it. At first, there was nothing. Then, a whirring sound emerged from behind them. Lucas swirled around with his weapon in front of him. Part of the wall behind them slid open. Lucas peered inside only to discover a small chamber with a glass casing. Lucas crept cautiously into the chamber and his eyes widened. Glenn's jaw dropped. Are those what I think they are? Weapons. Inside the glass casing were small arm weapons. Lucas walked over and stared at them. The weapons had a curve-like handle, like a dagger, and a short barrel. He had never seen anything like it. Are these special military weapons? Glenn asked. I don't think so. Lucas's eyes narrowed onto the strange symbols on the curve-like handle of the two weapons inside the casing. Is there a way to open the casing? Lucas asked. I'm already looking for it, sir, Glenn replied. Wait, there's another button here. It says press me. Go on and press it, Lucas said. He was getting a bit tired with all the buttons. Why couldn't his father have done everything all at once? What was the point of continuing to force them to do things? Then again, it all fit into his father's modus operandi. Even in death, his father was still pulling the strings. And if his father was still alive, he would have loved the fact that people were forced to follow his instructions, step by step. Glenn leaned forward and pressed on a button. A hollow projection appeared in front of them. But it wasn't his father. It was something else. Lucas immediately made the connection. It was an alien. Chapter 5, Springfield, Eastern Plains. Duncan watched as Aria drove him down Main Street. The journey to Springfield had taken slightly longer than that of Henderson. As Duncan glanced out the windows of his transport pod, he realized that Springfield was more crowded than that of Henderson. Aria brought the transport pod to a halt in front of the military barracks, which in this case was a multi-story, gray-toned building. Two soldiers stood on guard outside the front doors. Once Aria switched off the transport pod engines, Duncan stepped out. The two soldiers saluted him and he returned the salute. Aria walked up to them. Can we meet your unit leader? A soldier stepped out of the building. General Duncan, I'm Private Stanford. Private, take us to the scene where the bodies were found, Duncan ordered. Stanford was taken back. Sir, we moved the bodies to the nearby hospital. Do you want to go there first? Duncan shook his head. Take us to the scene. Stanford looked confused but nodded. He led them down the road until they reached an alleyway, where police tape had cordoned off the area. 2 more soldiers stood, keeping onlookers away. Once the civilians found the bodies, there was a steady stream of onlookers, Stanford explained. We managed to warn all of them to stay away. This is where we found them. Arya took a step forward. Were the bodies found next to each other? No, Captain, Stanford replied. The bodies were separated. Duncan rubbed his chin. That means they weren't killed at the same moment. Arya walked over to the position where the first body was found and examined the ground. Did you find any evidence of a weapon? Stanford shook his head. We didn't find any traces of a weapon, nor of a struggle. It's like the killer vanished into thin air. Arya got to her feet and Duncan exchanged a glance with her. Everything about the deaths were aligning to the deaths in the hospital room in Henderson and their encounter with the alien in the alleyway. Thank you, Private, Duncan concluded. We'll head to the hospital to check on the bodies. Stanford saluted him and turned and walked away. Duncan motioned to Arya, and they began walking down Main Street heading towards the hospital. Duncan recalled passing it on the way to the barracks. Main Street was very crowded. It appeared that the sudden murders in broad daylight hadn't dampened the mood of the people. Sir, it must be the same killer, Arya mused. Duncan gave a single nod. But what was it doing here? Why come to this town? We knew why it was in Henderson. Arya frowned. There must have been something here for the alien. I suggest we stop at the local police station. Duncan agreed. A little while later they stepped through the front doors of the local police station. The uniformed man behind the counter in the foyer looked up at him. His eyes widened. General, I wasn't expecting you today. Duncan walked up to the counter. I'm here to see your captain. Let me get him, the officer mumbled, a bit flustered before picking up his device and making the call. Duncan flicked his eyes around the foyer. There was a fused glass wall behind the counter. He could vaguely see officers and people working at their desks. It was a typical setup for a police station. A burly middle-aged man appeared through the door adjacent to the fused glass. General, this way, please. Duncan nodded and they followed the man to a side door that opened into a small meeting room. Duncan and Arya took their seats as the burly man sat down. I am Police Chief Robertson. Thanks for taking the time to meet us, Duncan said. Not a problem, sir, Robertson said. It's a pleasure to meet you. I heard a lot about you. Duncan tried to control himself. Again, his notoriety amongst the neighboring towns was something he was still trying to get used to. Yet he doubted he would ever be comfortable with it. I presume you're here because of the incident off Main Street, Robertson continued. That's right, this is Captain Arya, Duncan said. We just came from the scene of the incident. Robertson's eyes widened. If you had informed me, I would have got you a police escort, sir. Duncan waved his hands. It wasn't necessary. He liked the police chief's respect for the military, unlike the lieutenant from Henderson who had been unable to hide his disdain for them. Have there been any unusual occurrences in the last few days to a week around town? Arya asked. It's funny that you asked me that, Robertson said. What happened? Arya asked. We had an explosion occur at an empty building a day ago, Robertson replied. Duncan raised his eyebrows. What was the cause of it? Robertson shrugged. It's still under investigation. But to me, it looks like maybe a gas leak. But you aren't sure? Arya asked. Not yet, but I don't think we have time to focus on that, Robertson said. The 2 dead bodies have caused a ruckus in town. The locals are all talking about it. The problem is that it's rare for dead bodies to appear, not in broad daylight and not so close to Main Street. But I noticed the people are still going about their business, Duncan said. The crowds won't be scared off by the incident, Robertson said. Not on a clear blue sky day like today. Can you show us a site of the explosion? Duncan asked. Do you think there's a connection? Robertson asked. We can't tell without first taking a look, Arya added. Okay, I'll get my lieutenant to take you out there, Robertson said as he got to his feet. A random explosion before the alien had killed both soldiers? Duncan frowned. He was missing something here. Chapter 6. prison building, United Alliance 14. Williams' hands were in shackles as he sat on a chair. Kane was beside him. Williams had been right not to bring in their weapons. The soldiers who had come rushing out to capture them had been bewildered, not only because they had appeared out of nowhere, but more importantly because they had been unarmed. Even then, the lack of weapons had saved them from being fired upon. Williams flicked his eyes to the row of prison cells behind them. For whatever reason, they hadn't been shoved into the prison cells. Not yet, at least. Instead, they had been forced to sit on the chairs. 2 United Alliance soldiers kept watch over them. Neither of them had said a word in the last several minutes. "May we speak to your captain?" Williams asked again. Nothing. The soldiers continued to give them the silent treatment. "Did you not?" Williams started. One of the soldiers walked over to him and smashed the butt of his weapon against Williams' stomach. If Williams hadn't been seated, he would have collapsed onto the ground. Instead, he spat some blood from his mouth and leaned back in the chair. "That's enough," a voice boomed from behind the soldiers. Williams tried to see behind the soldiers, but the soldiers were still blocking him. "Step aside," the voice said. The 2 soldiers parted and a taller man in a uniform approached Williams. The man crossed his arms and stared. "I never thought I'd see the day that Captain Williams himself would try to sneak onto my base." Williams frowned. "Have we met before?" The man chuckled. "You don't remember me, do you?" Williams glanced at the man, but he couldn't recollect anything. Yet this man knew him. Williams was pretty sure of it. "Battle of Stenson," the man announced. "Maybe that'll jog your pathetic memory." Something clicked into place. "Captain Gainesfield." "For a second I thought you were beginning to forget things," Gainesfield smirked. "That wouldn't go well with General Stiles." Williams stole a sideways glance at Kane, who was watching Gainesfield in amazement. "How do you know about me?" Williams demanded. "We've been monitoring your camp on the other side of Wiley Forest for a while now," Gainesfield stated. Williams tried to ignore the pride in the United Alliance captain's voice. Despite that, his statement about monitoring them left a bitter taste in Williams' mouth. Kane shuffled his feet. Gainesfield jabbed a finger at him. "I wouldn't do anything stupid now." Williams eyed his lieutenant. Kane stopped moving and sat still. "We're here to warn you," Williams announced. Gainesfield belted out a laugh. "Are you serious? Is that why you walked into my base unarmed? To warn me?" Williams nodded. "Warn me that you're coming here unarmed?" Gainesfield asked. The United Alliance captain then turned to his soldiers and laughed. Gainesfield then turned back to Williams and narrowed his eyes. "Why are you really here?" "He told you the real reason," Kane said. "Did I tell you that you could talk?" Gainesfield scowled. "Williams, tell me why you are here." Williams didn't know what else to do but say the truth, no matter the reaction he might get. "We saw an alien entity walk into your base." "Did you now?" Gainesfield asked, not believing him for a second. "Did the alien entity look like a small, green man? Wait, did it have antennas sticking out of its head?" The 2 soldiers standing beside Gainesfield began to snicker. Williams raised his voice and glared at them. "Why else do you think I would surrender myself to your men?" Gainesfield shrugged. "Maybe the coalition forces kicked you out? Who knows? You could have run away from them and were trying to seek refuge here. Now look who's talking crazy," Williams scowled. "If that was the case, why would I make up a story of an alien? And this United Alliance base would be the last place I'd want to come to." Gainesfield took a step towards him and slapped his face hard. Williams shook his head. "What's wrong with you? I'm trying to help you. The same alien that entered our base slipped into my one and killed many of my soldiers several hours ago." Gainesfield paused for a long moment. The stretch of silence was a sign that Williams was getting through to the United Alliance captain. "That explosion was this supposed alien?" Gainesfield asked. It then dawned on Williams that the United Alliance's surveillance of the coalition forces base had picked up on the explosion. "Not supposed," Kane sneered. We hunted it down through the forest and then saw it disappear into your base. We even thought you were colluding with the alien. Gainesville put his hands on his hips. What does this alien supposedly look like? Williams shrugged. It's wearing a hood and a robe. Now that I think about it, it could be even a raincoat. Gainesville's eyes widened. He pulled out his device and hollered into it. Initiate a lockdown now. But it was too late. An explosion shook the building. Chapter 7, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. That thing is one ugly alien, Glenn remarked. The alien had a thin body, an oval-shaped head, 2 legs and 2 arms, but it had only a few fingers on each hand. Lucas motioned for Glenn to listen. Then the alien spoke. I am being made to talk under force by you humans. Lucas realized his father had forced this alien to record this video. The alien continued. You may think you are a mighty civilization, but... The alien's eyes shifted off camera. Lucas presumed his father was saying something to the alien. The alien turned back to face them. We are the Vazat. We have come to your planet for our own reasons, which I hope you never find out. The alien opened its mouth wide. Sharp teeth sprang out of them. It was like nothing Lucas had ever seen. Those teeth were long and could rip a human being into shreds. Do you think you can control us? The alien scowled. Think again, human. We will. Then the screen went blank. Glenn turned to Lucas. What was that all about? I think my father was trying to get the alien to reveal its intentions. From what we just saw, it doesn't look like he had much success. And did you see those teeth? Where the heck did that come from? The Vazat alien species are deadly, and they aren't on Earth to talk with us and make peace, Lucas said. That was one thing Lucas was able to conclude from the holo projection. Yet his father's strategy had provided them some crucial information. Lucas needed to get this to Duncan. If they have been on Earth for so long, why are they now appearing? Glenn asked. Lucas had also mulled over the sudden appearance of the Vazat. 30 years to the day. There was something significant linked to the dates, but he still didn't know what it was. I'm amazed your father captured one of them. That was another shocker. How had his father been able to do it would remain a mystery. Did you notice its tongue? Lucas glanced at Glenn. What do you mean? Let me rewind the holo projection, sir. Glenn pressed on the console a few times until the holo projection appeared at the point where the alien had shown his deadly teeth. Lucas frowned. The tongue was purple in color, a dark shade of purple. Chapter 8, Springfield, Eastern Plains. Duncan flicked his eyes about the explosion site. A small crater stood in front of them. The charred segments of the ground circled the crater. They were standing on the ground floor of an empty building. When Police Chief Robertson had said the building was empty, that had been an understatement. This place appeared like it had been hardly used for years. Duncan turned to Lieutenant Cruz, who had brought them here. What was this place originally used for? Many years ago, this place was used as a factory, Cruz replied. But I can't remember what they manufactured here. I'd need to check the records. Area took a step forward and examined the small crater in front of them. So this explosion was harmless to the town? Cruz hesitated. We believe so, but we are only at the start of the investigation. Your side has their hands full with an explosion and 2 deaths happening so close to each other, Duncan remarked. Yes, General, Cruz replied. Do we know what was used to trigger the explosion? Duncan asked. We are thinking it's a gas leak, but we aren't ruling out that an incendiary device was used to trigger it, Cruz said. Arya turned towards the young police officer. Is there a pipe system that runs beneath the building? I'm not sure about that, Cruz said. Duncan picked up on his captain's insinuation. The alien had picked this building for a reason, not because it was empty. On the way to this building, he noticed other empty buildings. There had to be something special in this building. Are you thinking the perpetrator intentionally chose this building? Cruz asked. Something in this building attracted him or her to it, Arya suggested. Duncan began to walk around the crater on the ground. His eyes scanned the walls of the ground floor. Then his gaze fell on one part of the left wall. Duncan walked over to the wall and stood in front of it with his arms crossed. Arya approached his side. What is it, sir? Do you see that? Duncan asked as the police officer appeared by his side. Cruz scratched his head. It's just some markings, probably left by some young troublemakers. Is that common? Arya asked. Unfortunately, it's increasing lately, Cruz said. I thought most of them enlisted, Arya said. That was the past, Cruz said. In recent months, the number of new recruits had been slowly declining. More of the younger generation are tired of the constant conflicts. They feel like they don't want to sacrifice for an endless war. Duncan wasn't surprised to hear that piece of information. In the last 6 months, he had seen reports highlighting that recruitment services were struggling to get young men and women to serve the United Alliance, especially from the neighboring towns. Sooner or later, the United Alliance was going to face that scenario on a bigger scale. The longer the war dragged on, the greater the effect on morale. I still don't see any pattern, Cruz admitted. Look closely and ignore the random scribbles, Duncan said. That's just noise. Arya and Cruz stared at the wall. They appeared to be struggling to understand the markings on the wall. To Duncan, it was obvious. He then jabbed a finger at one section of the wall. Notice the lines. Both Arya and Cruz nodded clumsily. He could sense the frustration in Arya's expression. The woman was unhappy she didn't see between the lines. Duncan understood her concerns. Ever since Captain Arya had been posted under him, Duncan had seen the hunger in her eyes. She took every chance to prove herself beyond a shadow of a doubt. Duncan didn't mind the hunger, but he did have his concerns about the motivation behind it. The last thing he wanted was for Arya to make a mistake, all in the name of proving herself. That would undermine everything. If Duncan even got a whisper of something like that occurring, he would shut it down immediately. I still don't see it, Cruz said, frustration hanging on his words. I see it now, Arya admitted. The tension in her expression had now been replaced with a smile. He was glad his captain had managed to figure it out. For a moment he had thought Arya was losing her edge. Notice the lines when you put them together, Duncan explained. They form a pattern. The young lieutenant's eyes grew wider. I got it, sir. The markings combined to form a strange set of symbols. I'll take a photo of it, sir, Arya volunteered. She then pulled out her device and captured several images of the wall and its markings. Are they a secret code or something? Cruz asked. Possibly, Duncan replied, catching a glimpse of Arya staring at him. He wasn't going to reveal his suspicions, but these markings could be an alien language. He would need someone back on the base to confirm it. Chapter 9, Prison Building, United Alliance 14. Captain Williams rolled on the floor of the prison building. When the explosion occurred, he and Kane had been thrown to the ground. Williams spit out some debris in his mouth. His hands were still shackled, making everything worse. He glanced around. Captain Gainesfield was on the floor motionless. One of his soldiers was dead. A piece of glass was embedded in the soldier's head, with a slowly growing pool of blood beside his body. The other soldier was on the ground but was trying to get to his feet. Williams pushed himself to his feet and leaned against the wall. His breathing was ragged. His shackled hands weren't helping matters. For whatever reason, at the last second, the United Alliance captain had realized the urgency of their warning. Williams couldn't tell what the trigger had been, but something had clicked in Gainesfield's mind. Williams could only presume that his description of the alien had triggered something. Williams then moved towards Gainesfield's body. Reaching the body, Williams winced as he knelt beside the United Alliance captain. Williams leaned forward to check on Gainesfield. The man was still alive. Gainesfield opened his eyes and began to cough. Take it easy, Williams muttered. The explosion knocked you. Gainesfield shook his head, interrupting him. What explosion? Williams looked out the front doors of the prison building. It came from outside. By his estimates, the explosion had occurred just outside the building. Gainesville groaned and touched his forehead. What the heck is going on? Then his eyes fell on the dead soldier beside him and he sighed. Gainesville got to his feet and Williams stood beside him. It has to be the alien, Williams admitted. By now, Kane had also gotten to his feet. Lieutenant Kane looked like someone had thrown him 100 yards into the air. The man had cuts on his face and arms but seemed to have weathered the explosion. Gainesville motioned to his remaining soldier. Unshackled him now. Williams suppressed a sigh of relief. He hadn't been sure if Gainesville would be willing to free them from their shackles. The soldier walked over and unlocked the shackles around Williams and Kane's hands. Once Williams removed the shackles, he twisted his arms. It felt good to be out of them. Then the sound of weapons fire pierced the air. Gainesville motioned to everyone to crouch. Williams and Kane obeyed without thinking. Williams' hands went to his holster and he grimaced. He had no weapons. Although coming into the United Alliance base unarmed had been the right thing to do, it was now working against him. It's coming from the left side, Gainesville mumbled. Williams, you better grab a weapon from him. Williams followed his gaze to the dead soldier. He nodded, crawled over and picked up the weapon and sidearm. He passed the sidearm to Kane and then took a position beside Gainesville. Williams inspected his weapon. It was like those that belonged to the coalition forces. He wouldn't be surprised to discover if the same arms manufacturer was supplying all the factions. What's the plan? Williams asked. Gainesville peered over the broken window. I don't have a visual on the attacker. Weapons fire continued to roar outside the building. Williams had to presume that the United Alliance soldiers had seen the alien figure, or at least knew of its position. Move out now, Gainesville ordered. Williams didn't hesitate as he and Kane crouched low and followed Gainesville out the front doors. Outside the prison building, Williams slammed his body against the wall and leveled his weapon in front of him. But there was no one. The only evidence of an explosion was a small crater several meters from the prison building. It must be the alien, Kane whispered. Williams' worst fear had come true. The alien who had left the path of death and destruction on his base had decided to repeat the cycle on this United Alliance base. Gainesville looked at Williams. Since you have some experience with this supposed alien, what do you suggest? Williams didn't skip a beat. Get your soldiers to stay away from it, surround it from a distance. Gainesville began speaking into his private comms. He then turned to them. Follow me. My guys say they have got it cornered. Williams exchanged a glance with Kane. He didn't like the sound of that. Chapter 10, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. Lucas glanced out the mouth of the smaller cave at the back of the hill. After they had collected the alien weapons, Glenn had discovered another hidden passageway, which had led them to this position. Lucas scanned the terrain. No movement caught his eyes. We're at the back of the hill, Glenn announced. Anything wrong? I don't know. Then his phone beeped. It was Duncan. I need to take this call. Just stay here and keep watch. Glenn offered a single nod as Lucas withdrew back into the passageway and answered the comms. Lucas, what took you so long? Duncan hollered. Lucas knew he had broken his promise of getting back to Duncan within 24 hours. It was so unlike him, but today was an exceptional situation. Let me explain, Lucas said. Are you in a private location? Yes, I'm back in my office. Go ahead. Lucas then shared the short version of everything that happened ever since he started studying the image of the light hitting the space shuttle. Once he finished, a stretch of silence dominated the comms. Duncan? So the alien race is called the Vazat, huh? You don't sound shocked, Lucas said. That's because we ran into one of them. What? Lucas listened as Duncan gave him a brief update on the things that had happened at Henderson and then at Springfield. This is serious, Lucas said. For reasons I am not aware of, the Vazat have decided to make their presence known to all of us. And your father met these aliens 30 years ago? That's my assumption. Everything I've witnessed up to now seems to confirm it. Lucas also still found it hard to believe that his father had met the Vazat and even captured one of them briefly. How his father had disentangled himself from them without getting killed would stay a mystery for the ages. Have you tested the weapons? Duncan asked. Not yet. Can you get over to the base and pass them to us? I can do that, but maybe not at your base. We should meet at a neutral location. I mean, the Vazat seems to be everywhere, and I don't want them to know what we discovered. Affirmative, Duncan replied. Any luck on the blinding light? Not yet. That was the one thing Lucas's father had failed to enlighten them on. Lucas and Glenn had searched the inner chamber for any other evidence. However, their search had come up with nothing. He could sense Duncan's frustration over the comms. I'll keep working on it, Lucas said. Then he caught a glimpse of Glenn pulling out his weapon and looking about. Duncan, I need to go now. Send me the location when you fixed it and the time for us to meet. Duncan acknowledged him and Lucas ended the call. What is it? Lucas hollered. We have incoming, Glenn replied. Lucas's body stiffened. He pulled out his weapon and stared into the sky. Was Glenn imagining things? They were in the middle of nowhere in Gibson Desert. There was no one out here. Lucas checked his device. If there was an aircraft in the air, it was too far to be part of any training run from the nearby base. Glenn raced back to him. Can you hear it? Lucas nodded. The hum of an engine reached his ears. He scanned the skies, but he couldn't see anything yet. Move out, Lucas ordered. Glenn shot him a wild look. Are you crazy? Whatever that vessel is, it could gun us down in the open. Staying here is our safest bet. They don't know we're down here. Are you sure of that? Glenn cocked his head. What do you mean? I mean, how do we know they don't know about us? They don't, Glenn insisted. What if they are coming for us? Lucas asked. What if something in the chamber below triggered an alert? But that chamber belonged to your father. Lucas showed him the weapon. This doesn't belong to my father. It belongs to the Vazat. Glenn sported a horrified expression. Are you saying? Lucas cut in. It could be the Vazat coming for us, but I agree with you. Let's stay here and watch. Lucas took a step back in the shadows and held his breath. The sound of the vessel began to grow louder. Then a glint in the sky caught his attention. A sleek, silver oval-shaped vessel appeared in the sky. That's no human vessel, Glenn admitted in a whisper. Chapter 11, United Alliance 14, Beside Wiley Forest. Despite Williams' misgivings about the situation on the United Alliance base, he followed Captain Gainesville around the corner of the prison building. Kane was a step behind him. Neither of them wanted to interrupt Gainesville, not yet at least. As they crept forward, Williams caught sight of several soldiers taking refuge behind some crates. Before Gainesville could say anything, a blue streak hit one of the crates. The crate exploded and sent the soldier's body, who had been hiding behind it, into the air. The soldier landed on the ground with a hard thud and a cracking sound. There was no need to check on him. The soldier was dead. Take cover, Gainesville hollered. Williams crouched behind another stack of crates with Kane. Gainesville looked at him. What the heck are those things? Williams wiped the sweat off his brow. My guess is that it's coming from an alien weapon. You can't be serious, Gainesville exclaimed. What made you think we were telling the truth? Kane asked. The raincoat description, Gainesville replied. Within the last hour, we received reports to be on the lookout for such a figure and consider the individual to be armed and dangerous. Williams' eyes widened at the implication. Whoever was attacking the coalition forces was also assaulting the United Alliance. Did you really think we were working together with this alien? Gainesville scowled as another explosion ripped through the air. Williams ignored the man's sarcasm. We need to do something. We can't stay behind here. The alien's taking us out one by one. Gainesville nodded. Can one of you see where those weapons fires are coming from? Williams peeked around the crate and his eyes narrowed before he crouched back down. 9 o'clock. Gainesville peeked and sat back down. You're right. A blue streak raced over their heads and slammed into the side of the prison building. Williams glanced back. A small crater had been created on the side of the building. Beside him, Captain Gainesville was tense. The man was thinking of their next steps. Staying put was out of the question. In the distance, the crackle of the alien's weapon reached Williams' ears. Another explosion occurred to their left. An idea began to form in Williams' mind. "I have a plan," Williams muttered through clenched teeth, his hand tightening around the weapon. "Just follow me." For a second, Gainesville wanted to say something, but he kept quiet. That was the opening Williams needed as he motioned to Gainesville and Kane. Williams then signaled for them to be ready to run. He listened, waiting for the next crackle of the alien weapon. When he heard it, he got up and sprinted to a building across from the crate they had been hiding behind. Williams hoped his gut instinct was correct. If not, he and the rest would be gunned down quickly. Reaching the building, Williams took cover behind it. He was breathing hard. He turned and was relieved to see both Gainesville and Kane with him. Then another explosion ripped along the surface. "The alien took out the crates we had just been hiding behind," Kane mumbled. Williams gritted his teeth. Gainesville grabbed him by the shoulder. "How did you know when to move?" Williams brushed Gainesville's hand aside. "It appears the alien's weapon needs a few seconds in between the bursts." "Help!" a voice pierced the air. Williams peeked around and gasped. 2 soldiers were standing in the open, but they were surrounded by something. A third soldier was standing a distance away and looking around frantically for help. "What's that?" Gainesville announced. "A force field," Kane announced. Williams turned to his lieutenant. "And how do you know that?" "I like to read, Captain," Kane replied. "Looks like the alien threw it over my soldiers," Gainesville scowled as he walked out from behind the building. Williams didn't move as he watched Gainesville walk boldly toward his men. "What's he doing?" Kane asked. Williams shrugged as his eyes scanned the vicinity from which the blue streaks of weapon fire had emerged. No movement could be detected. Williams sighed. He suspected the alien had thrown the force field around the soldiers and used it as a distraction to escape. Williams then nudged Kane and they both emerged from behind the building. By now, several other soldiers were standing near the force field. "Get me someone here who can deactivate this field," Gainesville barked. 2 soldiers around him left the area presumably to find an engineer. One soldier then pointed at the 2 trapped soldiers. "Captain, look." Williams turned his gaze within the force field. The 2 soldiers were clutching their necks. "What's going on?" Gainesville asked. No one answered him. The silence was deafening as they all watched in horror. The 2 soldiers began bleeding from their eyes before they collapsed onto the ground. A pool of blood began to grow around the 2 bodies. Then there was a humming sound and the force field disappeared. "Stand back," Gainesville shouted. "No one is to touch the bodies. Get me the medics now." Williams didn't need to understand the expression on Gainesville's face. His 2 soldiers were dead. The force field had been a death trap. Chapter 12, Officers Building, United Alliance 1. Duncan stepped into the officers' building and walked down the corridor. His conversation with Lucas had been stunning. At least now he had a name for the alien species. Vazat. The name itself didn't mean a thing to Duncan. Nonetheless, he had sent it to Captain Arya to do a thorough search on the EarthNet. Maybe they would get lucky and find some conspiracy theorists who had met the aliens before. Duncan was still trying to figure out how Lucas's father met the alien species without the government being alerted to it. Or had the government 30 years ago known of the Vazat? Those were things to ponder on later. Now, he had a specific objective. He stopped at the 3rd door on the right and knocked. "It's open," a voice said. Duncan opened the door and stepped inside. A man was standing with his back to him and studying the holographic board in front of him. "I didn't expect you back so soon, Jasper. Did you get the—" Duncan cleared his throat. The man turned and his face turned pale. "I'm sorry, sir. I was expecting someone else." "That's okay, Private Santiago." Private Santiago was the best person on the base who could decrypt any language. Captain Arya had recommended him to Duncan, and she had then passed him the image of the symbols they had captured at Springfield. Santiago offered a clumsy salute. Duncan frowned but returned the salute. He would need to talk to Arya about Santiago, but not today. Duncan was here to check on the progress. Duncan leaned over Santiago's shoulder and looked at the holographic board. Are those the symbols we found? Santiago smiled, stepping aside. Yes, sir. Ever since Captain Arias sent it to me, I've been studying it. The symbols are impressive. Aria had mentioned that Santiago had a passion for linguistics and had excelled in it in college. Duncan had been taken aback as to how he had ended up with United Alliance. Aria had said the recruiters looked for a variety of talents and linguistics was one of the harder vacancies to fill. Duncan didn't have much interest in people with a capability in linguistics, yet he knew there was a need for them. Ever since Duncan had been promoted to general, he had never used one of them, until today. Are you able to tell me what the symbols are saying? Duncan asked. There's a pattern. Explain. Santiago pointed to the leftmost markings. Do you see that? Duncan nodded. These symbols aren't random. They are forming a structure to a language. Where did you find these markings again? Duncan was wary of how much he wanted to reveal to the soldier. They were found on a wall in Springfield. What's in Springfield? Santiago asked. Nothing. It's just another town. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Were there any more markings? Duncan shook his head. This was all there was. What can you tell me? Santiago tapped on the hollow projection. Do you see this cluster of markings? At first glance, it looks like a simple set of lines. But it's more than that. This cluster forms something like a base unit. Duncan was slowly losing his patience. Couldn't Santiago get to the point? What does it mean? It could be like a position, but what's more interesting are these lines at the other end. It's like a repetition of symbols, but with increasing intensity. Are you telling me it could be a countdown? Santiago turned to Duncan. General, I hadn't thought about that possibility, but it could be. A countdown for what? Santiago's voice was quieter as he studied the symbols one more time. I can't tell you yet. Do you know who left these markings? Duncan heaved a loud sigh. Private, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Am I clear? Santiago's eyes brightened. Yes, sir. We believe these markings are from an alien being. Santiago took a deep breath. Are you serious? Do I look like I have time to be joking with you? Duncan growled. No, sir. Captain Arya told me you're the best person who can decrypt these markings. If it's a language that the aliens are using, I need to know what it's talking about as soon as possible. Got it, soldier? Yes, sir. I'll update you once I know more. The excitement in Private Santiago's voice was obvious. The man was on the verge of jumping up and down. To Santiago, studying an alien language is probably the gold medal of linguistics. Private, you're probably the first person to study this alien language. Don't let me down. People's lives are at stake. Santiago nodded. Duncan turned and left the room. Relying on a linguistics expert to help find the secrets behind the alien species was something new to him. He hoped Santiago could make progress. Chapter 13, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. Glenn grimaced. We can't stay here. We don't have a choice, Lucas said. The moment they had spotted the alien vessel in the air, Lucas's heart had begun to pound. He didn't think things could get any worse, but they had when the alien vessel had landed with a soft thud on the surface. The aliens had been drawn to this position by something they had done. Lucas was certain of it. He inspected the alien weapon in his hand. There was a button on the curved handle. He was tempted to press on it, but he resisted it. What's going on? Glenn asked. I don't see anyone coming out of the vessel. Neither do I. Lucas kept his eyes on the vessel. He didn't know anything about alien vessels. No one did. This was the first time he was seeing one. He narrowed his eyes. He couldn't tell the front from the back of the vessel. This wasn't the movies. They were looking at an authentic alien vessel. Sooner or later an alien would appear. That was certain. Would it be like the one on the hollow projection? Most likely. Lucas flicked his eyes about the desert. The terrain was harsh. They needed to run to the left around the hill and head to their transport pods. Any attempt to run in the open would expose them to the aliens in that vessel. Do you hear something? Glenn asked. Lucas cocked his head. Get inside now. He pushed Glenn deeper into the cave as an explosion hit the mouth of the cave. Debris and dust shot up into the air. and a few rocks fell alongside the cave's entrance. What was that? Glenn asked, cleaning away the dust on his clothes. That was from the vessel. They're targeting us. Glenn's eyes widened. You mean they know where we are? It was possible that the aliens had advanced technology that could detect life signs. Their scans must have detected their presence inside the cave. Things had taken a turn for the worse. Lucas studied the mouth of the cave. The aliens had intentionally stayed away from forcing the cave opening to collapse on itself. If the aliens wanted to trap them inside the cave, they could have easily fired at the rocks and caused the cave in, but the aliens hadn't chosen that path. Instead, the aliens had fired the equivalent of a warning shot. They're going to come in here soon, sir, Glenn said, anxiety lining his voice. Let me think. Lucas turned back and looked at the passageway they had used to arrive at this position. Heading back was not an option because they had no way to get back to the other side of the hill. I think we need to make a run for it, Lucas proposed. Glenn looked at him as if he was crazy. Sir, we won't make it far. Not if we run together. I don't understand. We run in different directions. I'll go to the left and you go to the right. That'll confuse them. They won't be able to fire on both of us at the same time. Lucas knew he was making an assumption about the aliens' targeting system when so little was known about them. Glenn rubbed his chin. It might work, sir. The confusion would give us enough time to take cover behind something else. Yeah, but you need to find that something else quickly, Lucas warned. I should be able to find a rock, Glenn said confidently. Glenn's sudden confidence was a concern to Lucas. Now wasn't the time to become overconfident. They had no idea of the capabilities of the Vazat. Lucas recalled listening to the aliens speak in the hollow projection. The alien's teeth sent shivers down his spine. Lucas shook off that image from his mind. Sir, I know it's a risk, but we have to take it, Glenn admitted. Lucas's father always trained him to have an appetite for risk. His father had always been a risk-taker. That was how he had built the Ment family empire. His father always looked down on those who couldn't take risks. To him, they were cowards who wanted to live a normal life. Even the fact that his father had captured a Vazat was astonishing. His father must have taken a great risk to accomplish that feat. Lucas knew well enough the risk of escaping from the cave. It was a big risk. But weighing all the options, it was the best chance of survival. They couldn't simply wait for the aliens to exit their vessel and come after them. Lucas had to act and do it now. Are you ready? Lucas asked. Glenn passed him the alien weapon. You better hold on to this, sir. Glenn then took out his own weapon. I feel better using this than something I don't even know how to use. Lucas agreed. He pocketed both alien weapons and tightened his grip on his weapon. Don't fire at them unless you have no choice. Why not? They're trying to kill us. We don't know that. Sir, I think we must be realistic about this. You saw the aliens' teeth. Those teeth could devour us to the bone. Lucas tried not to imagine it. Get ready on my count. Glenn shuffled his feet. 3, 2, 1. Lucas raced out of the cave and headed towards the left of the hill. Explosions began ripping across the desert terrain. Chapter 14, Gibson Desert Eastern Plains. Lucas dove behind some rocks and rolled away from the line of sight of the alien vessel. He slammed his back against one of the rocks. His heart was pounding. Explosions continued to ripple across the ground. The alien vessel had chosen to randomly fire at both he and Glenn. Lucas tried to peek around the rocks, but the continuous barrage of explosions stopped him. He had to wait it out. He hoped Glenn had been able to take cover. Lucas looked straight ahead, and he caught sight of their transport pods. Lucas grimaced. He couldn't make a run for it. The distance to the transport pods was still too great. Realizing how determined the aliens were to kill them, his chances of making it to the transport pods were minimal. And even if he did make it to the transport pod, there was nothing to stop the alien vessel from destroying the transport pod. Then, Lucas realized the explosions had stopped. He tightened his grip on his weapon and peeked from behind the rocks. The alien vessel was still there. But he didn't see any alien figures walking about. He could only presume the aliens had chosen to stay within their vessel. Right before his eyes, the vessel began to climb into the air. Lucas crouched back down and waited. Were the aliens leaving them alone? He doubted it. As if to confirm his feeling, the alien vessel flew over his area. His body stiffened, but the alien vessel didn't stop over his position. Instead, it flew over the hill. Where was the alien vessel going? Then it dawned on him. The alien vessel was going after their transport pods. Lucas clenched his jaw. As if on cue, two explosions could be heard in the distance. Lucas got to his feet and sprinted around the hill. He stopped and gasped. The transport pods had been destroyed. Lucas suppressed a sigh. Their only form of escape was gone. He flicked his eyes around and spotted another hill a distance away. Lucas didn't hesitate as he staggered to his feet and ran to it. He looked back and shouted to Glenn if the man was still alive. Fortunately, Glenn appeared a distance away and began sprinting towards him. Lucas smiled. He was glad that Glenn was still alive. Approaching the hill, they ducked into the mouth of a small cave. Lucas was breathing hard. "Where's the vessel?" Glenn asked. Lucas turned and flicked his eyes about the desert terrain. "I don't see it. They're out there somewhere. I can't believe they destroyed our transport pods. Now what do we do?" Lucas pulled out a device and pressed on it. "I've had enough of these aliens. Time to call in the local police." Glenn frowned. "How long will it take them to get here?" "I don't know." That was the truth. Pressing the emergency button out here in the middle of nowhere was different from that of his home. Lucas pocketed the device and looked for the alien vessel. No sign of it. The fumes from the burning transport pods rose into the sky. "I think the smoke will help the police get here faster," Glenn remarked. Lucas didn't want to tell his VP the truth. The transport pods would be burnt out in a matter of a few minutes. Then there wouldn't be any smoke trail for the police to follow. Lucas estimated it could take the police an hour to get here. That was assuming the police left their police station immediately. "Sir, I see something," Glenn said. "Where?" "On our left, near one of the burning transport pods." Lucas narrowed his eyes. He saw it. A figure was standing beside one of the transport pods. He couldn't tell who it was from this distance, but it was clear that the figure must have come from the alien vessel. "Is that one of the Vazat?" Lucas swallowed hard. "I think so." "Why is it watching the transport pod?" Lucas shrugged. The figure then turned away from the transport pod. "It's looking for us." The alien figure began to head in their direction. Chapter 15, United Alliance 14, beside Wiley Forest. Gainesville shouted at his other soldiers. "Did anyone see where the attacker went?" None of the soldiers responded. Gainesville raised his fists into the air. "Don't just stand around. The killer is still inside the base. Find him now." Williams could relate to the frustration mounting upon Gainesville. Williams had been there before when the alien figure had stormed into the coalition forces base. Now, Gainesville was at the mercy of the alien. This time, the alien seemed to be more creative in attacking the soldiers. Williams still couldn't understand why the alien figure had raced from his base to this one. There had to be a reason behind it. It wasn't a random decision. Gainesville turned to him. "Follow me." Williams nodded and he and Kane followed the United Alliance captain as they walked deeper into the base. Soldiers could be seen running around. Two medics raced past them, presumably to handle the dead bodies. Several soldiers did look at Williams and Kane. I'm sure they must have been surprised why two coalition forces personnel were inside their base. But the soldiers had bigger problems to worry about. A deadly alien was still lurking about here. Based on what Williams had witnessed with the force field that had killed the soldiers, the alien could unleash an untold amount of death and destruction, far greater than he had ever imagined. Then a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. Gainesville stopped and pointed to the left. "It's coming from that direction." Gainesville broke into a run as Williams and Kane kept pace with him. They ran past a building and rounded a corner. Bodies were strewn across the ground, all dead. The scene was horrific. It reminded Williams of the battlefield, but they were nowhere near the front lines. Instead, they were in a base. He doubted the United Alliance had ever witnessed such carnage within one of their bases. "Do you see it anywhere?" Gainesville asked with a fierce determination in his eyes. Williams had seen that look one too many times on the expressions of battle-hardened soldiers fighting for their lives. He just never thought he'd see it within the confines of a base. Kane pointed ahead. "Over there." Williams turned his gaze in the direction Kane was pointing to. The alien figure was standing further down and looking at them. Was it taunting them? Williams couldn't tell. Gainesville didn't hesitate as he raced towards the alien. "Hold on," Williams warned. "What's wrong, sir?" Kane asked. "Something's not right." Williams couldn't tell what felt wrong, but the alien still hadn't moved. Instead, the alien was watching as Gainesville and two soldiers charged towards it. Williams raced after them with Kane beside him. "Captain Gainesville, slow down." Either Gainesville didn't hear him or chose to ignore him. It didn't make a difference as the United Alliance captain closed the distance between him and the alien. "Why is it not running?" Kane asked in confusion. "Gainesville," Williams hollered, coming to a halt. But it was too late. An explosion ripped along the ground beneath Gainesville and his soldiers' feet. Gainesville and his men were thrown into the air. It had been a trap. That was why the alien hadn't moved at all. It had been waiting for Captain Gainesville. Williams suppressed a sigh. Gainesville shouldn't have been so impulsive. The United Alliance captain had let his emotions get the better of him. Williams understood the feeling, but it was imperative to stay in control and not let the enemy dictate things. "Sir, the alien's gone again," Kane admitted. Williams looked up and frowned. Even though the alien was gone, it couldn't be far. The alien still didn't have a way off the base. He approached the dead bodies of Gainesville and his men. Kane shook his head in dismay. Why didn't they figure it out? "I don't know," Williams replied, before turning to a few other soldiers. "Where's your lieutenant?" One of the soldiers replied, "He's on the other side at the front gate." "Get him here now," Williams ordered. The soldier didn't flinch and ran off around the building. "Can someone take these bodies away?" Williams ordered. "The medics are on the way here, sir," another soldier replied with a sigh. Kane turned to Williams. "Sir, we can't wait here. We need to find the alien." "But this isn't our base. Does it matter anymore?" Williams offered a reluctant nod and then motioned to the soldiers. "We're going after the killer." One of the soldiers nodded. Williams didn't like the situation he found himself in. He was on an enemy base trying to find the alien figure causing chaos everywhere. "What's the alien trying to do?" Kane muttered. Williams shrugged. He was as equally confused as his lieutenant on the alien's motives in killing people in the United Alliance base. The alien wasn't doing things randomly. It was up to something, but Williams still couldn't figure it out. And it was beginning to frustrate him. He was better than this. Williams motioned to Kane, and they began briskly walking towards the other side of the base. Chapter 16, Helipod, Eastern Plains. General Duncan was strapped into a seat on a helipod. He looked out of the viewport on his side. Another helipod could be seen a short distance away. In fact, two of them were escorting his helipod. That was the expected protocol, especially in times of conflict with the coalition forces. A little over 10 minutes ago, Captain Arya had stepped into his office with an urgent message from one of the United Alliance bases, specifically United Alliance 14. Apparently, they were under attack by an unknown figure. The critical piece of information was that the figure was wearing a robe like that of a raincoat. That had been enough information for Duncan. He couldn't believe that the Vazat was on a United Alliance base. What the heck were they doing there? It appeared that the Vazat had expanded their attack radius to include military bases. He had ordered Captain Arya to stay back at the base and keep tabs on Private Santiago and his study of the symbols. Suffice to say, Arya hadn't seemed pleased to stay back, but she had kept quiet about it. "Sergeant Monroe, have you been briefed by Captain Arya?" Duncan asked, stealing a sideways glance at the blonde-haired young soldier beside him. "Yes, sir," Monroe replied. When Duncan had requested Captain Arya to send a reliable soldier with him, Arya had been quick to propose Monroe. Duncan hadn't asked for her reasoning behind her selection, knowing full well That area would have had her clear reasons. To Duncan, this was an opportunity to train a younger officer. Despite the risks, he hoped Monroe would rise to the occasion. "Where's this base located?" Duncan asked. "It's a new base that was recently established bordering Wiley Forest," Monroe replied calmly. Duncan frowned. "That's close to the coalition forces, am I right?" Monroe nodded. "According to our records, it was a decision by the Council." Duncan pursed his lips. Sometimes the United Alliance Council did things that he didn't agree with. Worse was that he hadn't been privy to it. Then again, he wasn't supposed to know all things. His authority was over the Eastern Plains region. Wiley Forest didn't come under that region. Even then, it would have been nice if the Council did update the generals in charge of each region of what was going on. An update on the bigger picture would help facilitate any future collaboration. "What else do we know about this base?" Duncan asked. "Captain Gainesville oversees the base. An hour ago they called in an alien intrusion into the base. My guys spotted the special word describing the figure and alerted me to it." Duncan clenched his hands into fists. They had little information on what was going on down in that base. The Vazat could be creating havoc down there. "Has the general in charge been informed?" Duncan asked. Monroe hesitated. "I'm not sure of that, sir." Duncan frowned. He hoped Captain Gainesville had informed his general. Since Gainesville wouldn't know what hit his base, there was the likelihood that the general overseeing the base wouldn't even know what was going on. "Do you think it's the same alien that you encountered in Henderson and Springfield?" Duncan shook his head. "It should be another one. Unless the Vazat aliens can move at faster than light speeds across the continent." Monroe's eyes widened. "Do you think that's even possible?" "Why not? We're dealing with aliens from somewhere in the galaxy, right? We can't assume anything about them. They should be having far superior technologies that we could only dream of." The deeper that Duncan thought about it, the more he realized the challenges ahead were great for humanity. "Did you send my transmission to the Council?" Monroe offered a single nod. Prior to leaving his base, Duncan had sent out a transmission to the United Alliance Council on what had been going on and its suspicions. There was no point keeping all the information about an alien presence to a few individuals. The Council had every right to know about it. Hopefully they wouldn't panic, but get their minds together to formulate a possible defense. It would have been better for Duncan to have told them face-to-face, or at least through a video call, but he didn't have the time for it. Just getting the United Alliance Council members together would take hours. "Does that mean there are more Vazat down here?" Monroe asked. "It's a good assumption to start with." "How do we find out how many Vazat are on Earth?" Duncan was impressed with Monroe. The man was thinking and asking the right questions. Finding out the number of aliens on Earth was a good one. Duncan could only presume that the United Alliance Council was probably right now grappling with it too. Until they had a way to detect the alien species' presence, there was nothing they could do. Duncan then faced the window and opened the comms with Captain Arya. "General," Arya's voice came over the comms. "Any update from Private Santiago?" The unit at Springfield found a few more markings at another location. "Where?" Duncan asked. "It was another abandoned building on the southern edge of the town," Arya replied. "They sent me the markings and I passed it on to Santiago." "Okay," Duncan said. "Hopefully that will help Santiago piece together the puzzle." "What do you think the markings are all about?" Arya asked. "Could be any number of things," Duncan replied. "Keep me updated." "Yes, sir," Arya concluded, and the comms ended. Then their helipod banged to the left. Duncan shouted at the pilot, "What's going on?" "General, we have a vessel on an intercept course with us. It's coming in fast." Chapter 17, Helipod, Eastern Plains. Duncan gripped the sides of his chair as his helipod began to bank hard to the left again. He glanced out his viewport. One of the escorting helipods had disappeared. "Where's the other helipod?" "General, we asked them to intercept the incoming vessel," the pilot replied. "It must be the aliens," Monroe muttered. Duncan frowned. Even if it was the aliens, how had they detected their movement? If the aliens were openly using their vessels, it was a serious escalation of matters. We don't know what kind of vessel the aliens could be using, Monroe continued. With no intelligence on the alien species' air capabilities, they were running in the dark. It was too dangerous to remain in the air. Bring us down to the surface. General, I would advise against it, the pilot countered. Do it now, Duncan ordered. Yes, sir, the pilot replied. They had no choice but to take cover on the ground. Staying in the air, they would be a sitting target. After all, they were dealing with an alien species which probably had flown to Earth from somewhere out there in the galaxy. The alien vessel would have a wide range of weapons way beyond anything anyone on Earth had. And being in a helipod wasn't the best of places to be against an alien vessel. The helipod would be no match for such an alien vessel. The helipod began to descend rapidly. Sir, I'm going to bring down the helipod behind some hills, the pilot admitted. That should give us sufficient cover. Get us down quickly, Duncan said with an urgency in his tone. The pilot acknowledged him, and the descent was faster than Duncan had expected. Despite that, the helipod landed with a soft thud on Gibson Desert. A few minutes later, they had all left the helipod and taken cover in a small cave. Duncan scanned the vicinity. Where are our escort vessels? I'm checking now with them, the pilot replied. Duncan kept looking over the terrain. There was nothing much out here except for rocks, some trees and hills. Monroe turned to him. Staying out here too long is dangerous. Duncan agreed. The pilot turned back to him. The escort helipods are about to engage with the alien vessel. I have patched into their devices. I'm going to bring up a live footage of it. The pilot pressed on his device and a hollow projection appeared in front of them. Duncan narrowed his eyes. On the hollow projection appeared an oval-shaped silver vessel. It was unlike anything Duncan had ever seen. Is that it? Monroe asked. Affirmative, the pilot replied. My guys are trying to communicate with it. Duncan watched as the alien vessel didn't seem to move. What's it doing? It's just hovering a distance from the helipods, the pilot remarked. So far, there has been no comms from the vessel. Then chaos descended upon the live footage. One of the helipod pilots was shouting, Incoming weapons fire. Take evasive actions now. Duncan gritted his teeth. The alien vessel had chosen to attack his helipods. The live footage began to turn to the left and the right. They could no longer see the alien vessel. Only the blue sky was visible. The pilot shouted again, missiles launched. Then the screen went blank. The pilot standing beside Duncan tried repeatedly pressing on his device, but the blank screen remained. The pilot turned to him. General, I think we lost one of the helipods. Chapter 18, Officers Building, United Alliance 1. Captain Arya walked into the room. Private Santiago turned to her. Captain, did you receive the new markings? Santiago offered a single nod. All this is pretty amazing. Arya didn't have time to indulge in Santiago's excitement over the symbols. The discovery of another set of symbols in Springfield itself had been concerning. Coupled with that was the fact that no alien presence had been found at the second abandoned building. The soldiers in Springfield had accidentally discovered the symbols during a routine walk. Those additional markings had a purpose. It was up to them to figure it out as quickly as possible. What do we know? Arya demanded. She had personally recommended Santiago as the best possible candidate to decrypt the alien markings. Arya still recalled when she had met Santiago for the first time after his posting to the base. Arya had been surprised to learn of his linguistics background. It was unusual to find someone like that willing to serve the United Alliance. Despite the initial misgivings of Santiago, the man had proved her wrong by demonstrating a lot of mettle during the rigorous training schedule. He had even excelled where other soldiers had fallen short. But today, Arya needed him to show his linguistics capabilities. The additional markings you sent me are different from the first set, Santiago replied. Different in what way? The first set pointed to a countdown of an event. Whether it's a future or past event, I can't tell yet. But the additional markings seem to be like a set of instructions. Aria was losing her patience. To do what? Santiago paused for a long moment. The silence stretched into minutes, forcing Aria to tap her right foot. I have a theory, but Aria cut in. Tell me, soldier. Santiago hesitated. I was able to figure out some of the intentions of the symbols, but only some. Private, just tell me. Yes, Captain. The new markings seem to mention a comms position. Aria cocked her head. What do you mean? Like something that is supposed to send comms. Aria snapped her fingers. Like a comms tower? Santiago's eyes widened as he looked back at the holographic board and then at Aria. You might have something there. Santiago's theory was beginning to give birth to a suspicion in Aria's mind. Were the aliens trying to send communications back to where they came from? That would make sense if the reference to the comms position was confirmed. She needed to inform General Duncan immediately. Santiago, keep working on it. I need your confirmation on that second set of markings. Santiago nodded and turned back to the holographic projection. Aria left the room and stepped out into the corridor. She then opened the comms to General Duncan. There was nothing. She adjusted her comms link but was unable to make a connection. That was odd. Maybe the general was in an area with low service reception. Then an incoming comms caught her attention. Aria opened it. This is Captain Aria. Captain, this is Cruz from the Springfield unit, a voice admitted. What's going on, Lieutenant? Aria asked as she slowly began to walk down the corridor. We made a new discovery of some containers that I think may have belonged to the killer, Cruz announced. What kind of containers? I think you and the general will need to see it. Aria frowned. Without any way to contact General Duncan, she would need to decide. I'll be over there soon. Chapter 19, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. Lucas kept one eye on the Vazat alien figure. It had stopped walking in their direction. Instead, the Vazat alien was standing looking into the distance. Something had caught his attention. However, Lucas, from his vantage point, couldn't tell what it was. Where did it hide the vessel, Glenn asked. Lucas shrugged. The vessel was parked somewhere out of their sight. He was sure of it. By now, the two transport pods had stopped burning. There was nothing much left of them. He checked his device. I don't know what's taking the local police so long to find us. I doubt we can wait for them here. Lucas agreed. He motioned to Glenn to crouch down. From this position, they couldn't see the alien figure, which also meant the alien wouldn't be able to find them, unless it had a scanning device of some kind. Follow me and stay low, Lucas said. He began crawling on his hands and knees to the left. They had to put as much distance as possible between them and the alien. Their lives depended on it. The plan that formed in Lucas's mind was simple. Stay away from the alien until the local police got here. It sounded a bit naive. Lucas was putting all his hopes on the police being able to kill or capture the alien. In hindsight, the thought appeared ridiculous. What chances did the local police have against an alien and its vessel? Probably none. Yet Lucas had to hold on to the minute chance that the police might be able to do something. Maybe the appearance of the police might chase away the alien. It was a long shot, but better than nothing. Lucas's hands and knees were getting tired from all the crawling. Reaching a set of boulders, Lucas came to a halt. He wiped the sweat off his brow. Glenn leaned against the rock beside him. That was harder than I thought it would be. None of us were prepared for crawling along the rocky ground, Lucas said. Despite his daily routine of exercising in his personal gym, he wasn't in the best of shape. That was something he would need to change once all this was over. Glenn lifted a finger. Do you hear that, sir? Lucas listened and a small smile tugged the corners of his mouth. The sirens in the distance began to get louder. The police were finally getting here. About time. Lucas staggered to his feet and peeked over the boulders. His eyes fell upon the two transport pods rushing towards the site of their burnt ones. Where's the alien? Glenn asked. Lucas scanned the area, but he didn't see the alien. Where had it gone? Obviously, the alien had also heard of the approaching transport pods and decided to hide. Should we run to them? Glenn asked. Not without knowing the position of the alien. Maybe the alien got into his vessel and flew away. Did you hear any vessels? Fly by? I didn't. Glenn shook his head. Lucas watched as the flickering lights on top of the police transport pods got closer and closer. Soon the police transport pods came to a halt. Lucas flicked his eyes about. Still no sign of the Vazat alien, but Lucas felt it in his gut. The Vazat alien was watching the new arrivals. Should we warn the police? Glenn asked. Lucas grimaced while shaking his head. Under no circumstances could he reveal their position. If the Vazat aliens discovered their position, they would be in trouble. I can see the police getting out of the transport pods, Glenn observed. 4 policemen wearing body armor and carrying weapons stood outside their transport pods. The policemen began walking towards the burnt-out transport pods. They stopped around it and began pointing their weapons in different directions. A sound whistled through the air. To Lucas's horror, a missile flew at the policeman, but the missile wasn't targeting the police. Instead, it flew over their heads and slammed into one of their police transport pods. A large ball of flames erupted as one of the police transport pods exploded. Chapter 20, United Alliance 14, beside Wiley Forest. Captain Williams crouched behind a transport pod. Kane was beside him. Blue streaks of weapons fire roared over their heads. When they had turned the corner around one of the buildings on the base, Williams had detected the alien figure standing on top of a heap of rubble and firing its weapons. Williams hadn't expected the alien to make a stand, but he suspected it had run out of space to mount and escape. Despite that, something continued to bother Williams. Why hadn't the alien simply blown up the fence and rushed out? That's what it had done on his base. What was stopping the alien from doing it here? The actions of the alien kept Williams unsettled. We are pinned down here, Kane admitted. I'm aware, Williams growled as he glanced to his side. Across from them were 2 United Alliance soldiers who were taking cover behind another transport pod. The fear in the soldiers' eyes was obvious. None of them knew how to handle an alien. Another blue streak shot through the air and slammed against a building behind Williams. I want you to take those 2 soldiers and head around the other way, Williams said. Yes, sir, Kane said. Williams signaled to the 2 soldiers, letting them know that Kane was coming with them. The 2 soldiers acknowledged him. Williams hoped the United Alliance soldiers would follow Kane's orders. This was the first time the 2 factions were working together. Who would have expected that an alien enemy would unite the 2 factions, at least for now? Williams then pulled out a smoke grenade and hurled it in the direction of the alien. As soon as smoke began to pierce the air, Williams nudged Kane, who sprinted out from behind the transport pod. Blue streaks of weapons fire continued to emerge, but Williams was relieved that they weren't targeting Kane as he raced over to the other side. The wall of smoke was doing its work. Williams watched as Kane huddled together with the 2 soldiers briefly before they raced down the side of the building. Williams hoped Kane and the 2 soldiers could cut off the alien's escape path. That would help him push the alien into their hands. His objective remained to capture the alien. Whether that was even possible was another question, but one thing at a time. Meanwhile, Williams kept his eyes on the wall of smoke, which had begun to clear. Despite that, the blue streaks from the alien hadn't taken a break. The alien was determined to kill him and the rest. Now it was time to move to the next step in his plan. Chapter 21, Gibson Desert Eastern Plains. Lucas crouched down as the ground beneath his boots reverberated. What the heck? Glenn hollered. Lucas peered again in the direction of the 4 policemen. All of them were still alive. That was a relief. The 4 policemen had now taken cover behind the burnt-out transport pods, but he doubted the men would know what was happening. Where did that come from? Glenn asked. The alien vessel. It was the only thing that made sense. Somehow the alien vessel had been able to target one of the police transport pods. Was that why the Vazat alien was nowhere to be seen? Had it returned to its vessel? We have to help them, Glenn said. Not yet. Glenn didn't seem pleased with his decision, but Lucas was beyond caring. The fact was that they didn't have a visual on the alien vessel. Without that, they couldn't just run up to the policeman. Lucas gazed at the burning police transport pod. Then another explosion ripped through the air and the second police transport pod went up in flames. The Vazat alien's strategy was becoming clearer. It had wanted to cut off any attempts by the policemen to withdraw. Then streaks of weapons fire began hitting the area around the policeman. A scream pierced the air as one policeman clutched his chest and collapsed to the ground. "Let's go," Lucas said. He then began to sprint towards the remaining 3 policemen. He couldn't sit back and just wait for them to be slaughtered. Not like this. Lucas pulled out one of the alien weapons and gripped it with his hand. By now, more streaks of weapons fire were targeting the policemen. "I can see the alien," Glenn announced. Lucas stopped and looked to his left. The Vazat alien was hiding behind some boulders. Lucas turned and raced towards the Vazat alien. He couldn't understand what had changed, but Lucas had given up on letting the fears of fighting the alien take charge of him. Another shout roared through the air as a second policeman collapsed to the ground. The Vazat alien's aim was good. Lucas slowed down as they approached the boulders where the alien was hiding behind. He came to a stop. He had a clear line of sight to the alien. The alien hadn't noticed their approach. It was too obsessed with killing the remaining 2 policemen. Fortunately, the policemen had stopped firing and taken cover. Nonetheless, the alien kept firing at them. It wasn't letting up. Lucas lifted the Vazat weapon and leveled it in front of him. He pressed on the first button and a whirring sound emerged from the weapon. Lucas didn't know how to use the weapon. There had been no instructions back in the chamber where they had found the weapons. But Lucas wasn't going to let that stop him. He had to try and fire the weapon. It was the only way ahead. The policemen's lives were at stake. He motioned to Glenn to remain quiet. Lucas then aimed the weapon at the Vazat alien. Under normal circumstances, Lucas would have given the alien a chance to surrender. But this was far from normal circumstances. The alien's objective was clear as daylight. It wanted to kill them all. 2 of the local police were already dead. Lucas' hand trembled as he focused on the alien figure. The weapon in his hands was vibrating. He assumed that it was ready. He pressed on the second button. Chapter 22, United Alliance 14, Beside Wiley Forest. Lieutenant Kane crept down the side of the buildings with the 2 United Alliance soldiers behind him. He was leading 2 enemy soldiers to stop the alien. Even if he had wanted to, he could have never made up such a story. Not in his wildest imagination. It sounded ridiculous and completely out of this world. Then again, they were fighting against an alien being from outer space. Nonetheless, Kane had always led units back on his base. But this felt decidedly different for many reasons. To his relief, the 2 soldiers had followed his instructions without questioning them. Kane could only presume that the soldiers were new recruits who hadn't smelt or tasted the battlefield. Not until today, at least. He stopped at the corner of the building and turned to Private Collins. "How far is the front gate from here?" Collins pointed to the left. "It's only a few minutes in that direction." Kane looked to his right. He could see the high fence that surrounded the base. If the alien wanted to head to the front gate, it would need to come this way. "We're going to take up positions here," Kane announced. Private Collins and Private Chamez nodded. Kane pointed ahead and the 2 soldiers took up their positions. "My captain's going to flush it out," Kane explained. "That'll force it to head this way. Once we see the figure, I want you to open fire and don't stop until I say so. Is that clear?" Both soldiers acknowledged him. Kane checked his device. He expected to hear something at any second. Then the first explosion could be heard in the distance. It was followed by a second explosion. They were louder than what Kane had anticipated. "Get ready," Kane hollered. He then aimed his weapon in the direction they expected the alien figure to come from. It took a few more seconds before the alien figure appeared. It came running into their line of sight. That was more than enough. Kane and the soldiers opened fire. However, the alien figure was able to dodge their weapons fire. Kane couldn't explain how the alien was doing it, but none of their weapons was hitting it. To his shock, multiple things began to happen. A faint light began to emerge from the alien figure. At first, it caught the 2 soldiers by surprise and they stopped firing. But Kane had seen the light before. "Keep firing, don't get distracted by the light." Kane kept firing, but the light began to grow brighter and brighter. Kane stepped out and fired again and again. It was like his streaks of weapons fire were being deflected by the bright light. Kane stopped firing and motioned to the two soldiers to do the same. By now, the light was as bright as it had been in the cave. Kane realized that the bright light was the alien figure. It wasn't a separate light. Somehow the alien figure had covered itself from head to toe with the bright light. Yet the alien figure hadn't moved. Kane's heart was pounding. It was the first time he was staring directly at the bright light. Then the alien figure turned his head towards them. "Take cover," Kane hollered. He dove to one side and rolled away. However, the two soldiers were still frozen in place. The shock of the bright light had reignited their fear. Kane motioned for them to get away. But it was as if they weren't listening. Kane caught a glimpse of their eyes. Both soldiers had a blank stare in them. What was going on? Kane kept his eyes away from the bright light. He began to suspect that the bright light had done something to the soldiers. Then two streaks hit the soldiers on their chests and they collapsed to the ground. Kane's jaw dropped. This was how the alien had killed his men in the cave. The bright light then disappeared. Kane turned to face the position where the alien figure had been standing, but it was gone too. Kane got to his feet and walked over to the two dead soldiers. The expressions on their faces were still blank. Captain Williams appeared. What happened? Kane sighed and explained their encounter with the alien figure. Where did it go? Williams asked, glancing around. I don't know, Kane said, pointing to the dead bodies. What happened? Williams asked. The alien became a bright light, just like in the cave. But this time I saw what it did. It fired two light streaks at the soldiers' chests. That killed the soldiers. They didn't have a chance. Williams cast a sympathetic look at him. We can't let it get away. Come on. Chapter 23, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. The ricochet from the alien weapon took Lucas by surprise. A blue streak shot out of his weapon. It sped forward and hit the alien on the side. Lucas was amazed that his aim was perfect. The alien stopped firing its weapon and clutched its side. Lucas didn't stop. He fired again, but this time the alien crouched behind the boulder. Lucas grimaced. He walked out from behind the boulder and kept firing in the direction of the Vazat alien. By now, the two policemen had got to their feet and were pointing at him. Lucas motioned to them to stay at their position. Then a sound reached his ears. Another missile appeared from the other side of the hill. It flew past Lucas's head and went towards the policeman. Lucas shouted to them to run, but it was too late. The two policemen didn't realize what was coming at them. The missile hit their location and an explosion ripped along the desert. Lucas grabbed hold of a tree as the ground beneath him shook. Lucas sighed. Despite that, he kept his eyes on the Vazat alien. Running to it, Lucas came to a halt beside the boulder. His hands trembled as he stepped behind the boulder. The Vazat alien lay on the ground. A pool of purple liquid was forming around the body. Lucas was mindful not to step too close. He didn't know much about the alien's blood and feared it could be toxic to humans. Don't move, Lucas shouted. He heard a sound behind him and was relieved that it was Glenn. The Vazat alien was still covered by its hood and robe. Lucas couldn't clearly see it. Then the Vazat alien turned its head at him. By Lucas's estimates, it was a male alien, like the one in the hollow projection. Where did you come from? Lucas demanded. His heart was still thumping in his chest. He was talking to a real alien from beyond Earth. The Vazat alien snickered at him before opening its mouth. The appearance of its teeth forced Lucas and Glenn to take a step back. You don't know what's coming, humans, the Vazat alien mumbled. Where are the others? Lucas asked. He knew there were more Vazat around here. You are like your father, the Vazat alien scowled. But he couldn't stop us then, and you won't be able to stop us now. The rising has begun. The rising has begun? Lucas frowned at the words. What did the Vazat alien mean? What rising was it talking about? Why did you come here? Lucas asked. We have always been here, the Vazat alien replied. Then a faint light began to appear. Lucas didn't hesitate. He pressed on his alien weapon. Two more blue streaks shot out of it and the alien's body slumped back. The faint light disappeared. Is it dead? Glenn asked. Lucas offered a reluctant nod. He wished he could have gotten more intelligence from the Vazat alien, but he would have to make do with what he had. Looks like the alien weapon is a keeper, Glenn remarked. Despite not knowing how the alien weapon really worked, it had done its part well in killing the Vazat. I think it's recharged again, Lucas mused, examining the weapon in his hands. Lucas then glanced back in the direction of the policeman. It was a waste that he hadn't been able to save some of them. I don't think any of them survived, Glenn sighed. Lucas gave a reluctant nod. The policemen never even knew what they had been facing. If they had, maybe they would have brought more firepower with them. Sir, look, Glenn said. Lucas turned back and his jaw dropped. The alien body that had earlier been on the desert ground had begun to melt away. It kept melting right in front of their eyes until it was nothing but a purple-colored puddle. What's going on? Glenn asked in a nervous tone. Lucas shrugged. Then the puddle seeped into the ground and disappeared. Lucas had hoped to haul away the alien body and get someone to study it. Many useful things could have been learned from the alien physiology. But that opportunity had just vanished. Lucas also suspected the alien body's melting away was a mechanism to ensure no one studied it. I want to find this alien's vessel. Chapter 24, Unknown Position, Eastern Plains. General Duncan stared at the blank screen. What about our other helipod? I'm trying to get in contact with it, the pilot replied. Duncan then turned aside and opened a comms with Captain Arya. He needed to inform her of their situation. If not, wild rumors might begin to spread of his demise. That was the last thing Duncan wanted to deal with now. However, he couldn't establish a comms with Arya. He then turned to Monroe. Can you get a comms back with the base? Monroe pulled out his device and tried. After a few seconds, he shook his head. Something could be jamming all comms in this area, the pilot admitted. Duncan frowned. It must be the alien vessel, Monroe said. If the aliens were jamming the area, it meant only one thing. The aliens knew that Duncan and the rest were still somewhere around here. We need to move out of here. Sir, where do we go? The pilot asked. It was a good question. Duncan scanned the terrain. The harsh conditions of the desert surrounded them in all directions. How far away are we from the nearest town? It would be at least an hour or two by foot, the pilot replied. Staying in this position was out of the question, especially knowing the Vazite might come searching for them. They had to move. Move out then, Duncan ordered. Monroe, take the lead. He then turned to the pilot. Keep trying to get the comms back online with the other helipod or anyone else. Yes, sir, the pilot replied. It had been 10 minutes since they had left the original position. Duncan kept scanning the vicinity around him. No movement caught his attention. The landscape was barren. There was not even a sign of any animal. It appeared that nothing could live out here. He checked the sun. They needed to get into town before nightfall. Despite there being no animals around in daylight, he doubted that would remain the same at night. Most animals did come out at night, and he had no intention of staying out in the desert to deal with them. Then, a whirring sound reached Duncan's ears. The pilot turned to him. It's a vessel. Take cover, Duncan ordered. They all ran to the nearest boulders and crouched down behind them. The sound was coming from the other direction. Could it be the other helipod? If it was, they had a chance to escape this harsh terrain and head to the nearest town. I can see it, the pilot announced. The moment Duncan's gaze fell on the vessel, his hopes collapsed. It wasn't a helipod. It was an alien vessel. Sir, I got another vessel on an intercept course, the pilot added. It's the other helipod. Duncan kept his eyes fixed on the sky. The two vessels were on a collision course. The pilot spoke. The alien vessel's slowing down. I think it detected our helipod. Can you patch in a comms with the helipod? Duncan asked. Negative, sir, the pilot sighed. I can see the helipod, Monroe announced. Duncan turned his gaze in the opposite direction. Before he could say any word, the helipod exploded in a ball of flames. What happened? Monroe hollered. The pilot shook his head in dismay. It was shot down. Get down, Duncan warned. With both helipods gone, they were on their own out here in the harsh terrain. The alien vessel is heading in our direction, the pilot said. Chapter 25, Springfield, Eastern Plains. Captain Area brought her transport pod to a stop in front of the military barracks building. Along the drive over to Springfield, she had repeatedly tried to get through to General Duncan, but it had all been in vain. Something was wrong. General Duncan wouldn't be out of comms range for so long. Nonetheless, there was nothing she could do about it, and she doubted the general would want her to sit by idly when there was a new lead in Springfield. Arya knew she hadn't gotten into her current position by being passive. It was her proactiveness that had helped her stand out. Arya switched off the transport pod's engine and stepped out of it. Lieutenant Cruz walked up to her. It was apparent the man had been waiting for her. "Lieutenant, where are the containers?" Arya asked. "Captain, please follow me," Cruz replied. It didn't go unnoticed by Arya that the man was tense. His entire body language was screaming it. Something had rattled the young lieutenant. Arya was about to find out what it was. She followed Cruz as he led her away from the military barracks building. Soon they were walking down Main Street. Then Cruz took her down a side road. On either side were more abandoned buildings, like those where they had initially discovered the first alien markings. Arya hoped the lieutenant wasn't wasting her time. Cruz stopped at one of the buildings and ushered her inside. As Arya stepped in, she found two more soldiers standing guard at the ground floor of the abandoned building. "It's this way," Cruz said. Arya nodded as she walked towards the back of the ground floor. Cruz stopped and pointed ahead. Arya's eyes widened. In front of her were several long, thin, black crates. "We found this an hour ago," Cruz explained. "My guys thought they were just some crates, but then one of them noticed the marking on the side of one of the crates." Arya took a step forward and knelt beside the first black crate. Cruz was right in his assessment. The markings on the side of the crate looked like those they had discovered earlier in Springfield. "These are similar to the second set of markings that you found," Arya observed. "That's our assessment too. They seem to be linked." Arya examined the crate without touching it. The material didn't seem to be like anything she had ever seen. Cruz must have sensed her thoughts. "I think the crate is made of an unknown material." Arya then looked inside the open crate. It was empty, but something had been stored here, and that something had been taken out, leaving the empty crate behind. "Did you run your scans on the interior of this crate?" Arya asked. "We did, but we didn't pick up anything." Arya frowned as her gaze went to the remaining empty crates. These crates had been used to store alien technology. That was her best guess right now. But who had taken them out, and where had they been transported to? "I need your men and women to keep walking around the town," Arya ordered. "Are they supposed to look for whatever was inside these crates?" Arya got to her feet. "They need to keep their eyes open for anything suspicious." She then motioned to the lieutenant to come closer. Cruz walked over to her. Arya lowered her voice. "We're dealing with aliens." Cruz looked confused. "Do you mean like from another continent?" Arya pointed up above, from the galaxy. Cruz's face turned pale. "I had a feeling something wasn't right when we found those markings." "I need you to keep this information to yourself," Arya warned. "Yes, Captain." Arya continued to look at the containers. How had the aliens been able to carry off the items without anyone in town noticing it? Was that even possible? Someone should have noticed it. "Are there any recording devices along this road?" Arya asked. "Let me check," Cruz said as he motioned to one of the soldiers, who turned and walked away to the front door. Arya continued to walk around the crates. They were all the same size and dimension, with the same alien markings. The soldier returned to Lieutenant Cruz's side. "There's a recording device outside. We are extracting the footage from it now." That was a start. Arya couldn't wait to see the video footage. It might be able to shed more light on how the items in the crates were transported out of here. Chapter 26, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. Lucas crept with Glenn beside him along the desert ground. With the dead Vazat's body seemingly gone, they had to find the alien vessel. It was their way out of here. Lucas was jumping ahead a bit too much, but he realized the alien vessel could help them in many ways. They were on the other side of the original hills where they had found his father's secret chamber. So far, there had been no sign of any other aliens nor the alien vessel. Lucas couldn't assume there had been only one alien in the vessel. That kind of thinking could get him and Glenn killed. The Vazat alien had not shown any inclination to discuss things. Instead, the Vazat alien's focus had been on killing them. Glenn nudged him. "Sir, is it wise to go for the alien vessel? We need a way out of here," Lucas replied. "I don't know if the local police will send anyone else out here. Probably not for a while. Once the local police figured out something had gone wrong, they might send a backup unit, but that could take hours. They couldn't afford staying around here. Which makes it that more urgent for us to get to the alien vessel. Do you know how to fly such a vessel?" "I'll figure it out," Lucas said. During Lucas's military stint, he had been provided the opportunity to fly the helipods, and he would be the first to admit that he relished the opportunity. He never knew he would enjoy flying a helipod. It had erupted in him a new passion. Although once he told his father about it, his father frowned. His father preferred getting his pilots to fly him about. But to Lucas, it brought a new sense of excitement. How much harder could it be to fly an alien vessel? He knew he was being overly optimistic, but he couldn't let go of the challenge. In the end, it was a new challenge, and one thing Lucas enjoyed was meeting a challenge head-on. Lucas continued to walk around the hill. Coming from the back, he hoped to surprise any remaining Vazat that might be waiting for them. Rounding the corner, Lucas signaled for Glenn to stop. Lucas's eyes shined. A distance away stood the Vazat vessel in all its glory. The temptation to run to the vessel was strong, but Lucas had to keep himself in check. There could be any number of Vazat aliens inside the vessel. "Do you see that?" Glenn asked. "What?" "Some kind of door at the back of the vessel." Lucas narrowed his eyes. Glenn was sharp. There was something that shimmered off the vessel's rear. From this vantage point, it could be a door, possibly the entrance to the vessel. Lucas flicked his eyes about the rear of the vessel. No movement, but that didn't mean a thing. "We don't know if anyone else is on the vessel." Glenn scratched his head. If there was someone on board, wouldn't they have detected us by now? Glenn did make a strong argument. The alien vessel had shown no signs that it had observed them. If the Vazat aliens were pretending not to notice them as part of a trap, he would be impressed. "Come on," Lucas said. He then crept forward, leading Glenn towards the alien vessel. Every few steps he stopped and listened for any sign of the alien vessel's weapons being started up. Although Lucas wouldn't even know when the alien vessel fired its weapons, a cautious approach was the best one. Taking calculated steps, they inched ever closer to the alien vessel. Reaching the rear of the vessel where they had observed what appeared to be a door, Lucas stopped. His breathing was ragged. He couldn't believe they were standing beside an alien vessel. This vessel had come from somewhere in the galaxy, far beyond anything humanity had been able to observe. His eyes scanned the silver hull of the alien vessel. It looked flawless. Then his gaze dropped to the shimmering part of the rear of the alien vessel. It was a door of some kind. No doubt about it. "How do we open it?" Glenn whispered. Lucas studied the edges of the door, looking for any panel or lever that might help open it. His eyes then locked onto a small indent on the right side of the door. That had to be it. He jabbed a finger at it. Glenn nodded. Lucas then pressed on the indent with his fingers. A hissing sound reached his ears. The door slid open. Chapter 27, United Alliance 14, beside Wiley Forest. Williams approached the area near the front gate. The entire base was in chaos. Soldiers were running about. Small fires were burning in multiple locations. The alien had left a trail of death and destruction with the intention of hiding behind the chaos. Williams had to admit it was an effective strategy. A younger-looking man approached him. "Are you the coalition forces captain?" Williams nodded. "My name's Lieutenant Marshall," the man said. "I was told you were looking for me." Williams then shared how they had appeared at this base and what had transpired since then. "I can't believe Captain Gainesville is dead," Marshall commented. The disbelief lining his voice had no place to hide. From Williams' perspective, Marshall wasn't a seasoned battlefield leader, and he had just lost his commanding officer. "It was a trap," Kane said. "Is there any sign of the alien figure?" Williams asked. Marshall shook his head. "Are you serious that this is an alien?" Williams nodded, sharing their information with the lieutenant. "What the heck are they doing down here on Earth?" Marshall asked, frustration dripping from his voice. "It doesn't matter now," Williams stated, his eyes glancing at the front gate. We need to catch it. Are we still in a lockdown? Marshall nodded. No one's entering or leaving this base. Don't count on it, Kane said. As if on cue, an explosion ripped away behind Marshall closer to the front gate. Williams was thrown away from the blast. He hit the ground and pain shot up across his body. Williams shook his head. There was a ringing in his ears. He blinked a few times before flicking his eyes about. Lieutenant Kane was a distance away but seemed alive. Lieutenant Marshall had been thrown against the nearest wall, but his feet were moving. At least the second in command of the United Alliance base hadn't died. Williams staggered to his feet and leaned against the transport, his breathing ragged. His gaze turned towards the front gate. There was a big hole where the front gate had stood. Alien had escaped. Again. It's gone, Kane muttered. Marshall put his hands on his head. What's going on here? Williams eyed the man. We're dealing with a highly dangerous alien being. We need to start tracking it. Now? Marshall asked in disbelief. Williams nodded. Before it gets too far ahead. I need to get things under control here, Marshall insisted. There's quite a lot of dead bodies. Williams understood the overwhelming challenges that Marshall was facing. Give me 2 of your soldiers and a comms unit. We'll keep you up to date. Right now, that was the best thing Williams could do. Are you sure this is a good idea, Captain? Marshall asked. If we let the alien being get away, we don't know if it will come back with more of its kind, Williams warned. Marshall gave in. I'll send you what you need. Give me a few minutes. With that, Marshall walked off. It's a difficult time for him, Kane observed. It is. What do you think the alien's up to? I think it was going somewhere else before we interrupted it. Kane cocked his head. What do you mean? I think the alien figure was heading to some location deep within Wiley Forest, Williams mused. It was only a suspicion that he had, but he felt the likelihood of it being true was becoming stronger. There was no reason for the alien being to make a detour and attack the United Alliance base. There was no objective. The alien only left a trail of death and destruction. That meant the whole attack on the base had been something it hadn't planned to do. Williams was determined to find out what the alien was hiding in the forest. Chapter 28, Springfield, Eastern Plains. Captain Arya was seated at a table in a meeting room in the military barracks building. She took a sip of the coffee that one of the soldiers had brought in for her. The coffee was doing wonders to her. She hadn't realized that she had needed it until Lieutenant Cruz had insisted she have one. Arya tried again to make a call with General Duncan, but there was nothing. She was getting frustrated with her inability to update the general. It also increased her anxiety on whether something had happened to the general. Cruz opened the door, stepped in with another soldier, and shut the door behind them. Do you have the video footage? Arya asked. Cruz had the soldier place a device on the table. It's on this device, but I haven't looked at it yet. None of us have. No better time than now, Arya said. Cruz sat down opposite her. The soldier with Cruz sat beside him. Cruz then turned to the soldier. Play it. Yes, sir, the soldier replied. The soldier pressed on the buttons on the device and a whirring sound permeated throughout the meeting room. Arya leaned back in a chair and folded her arms. A hollow projection appeared at the center of the table. Initially, the video footage showed an empty road. Arya began to drum her fingers on the table. Was the video footage going to end up being a dead end? She hoped not. The video footage was the only chance they had to find out what had happened to the contents within the crates. There's nothing, Cruz started. Arya interrupted him. Wait, I see something. A truck pod came into view. The truck pod drove up to the building. It then turned and reversed, stopping at the front entrance to the abandoned building. This should be them, Cruz highlighted, excitement lining his voice. 2 figures stepped out of the truck pod. Arya squinted her eyes. She frowned. They were both wearing hoods and robes. It was impossible to see who they were. Can either of you identify them? Lieutenant Cruz and his soldiers shook their heads. Arya watched intensely as the 2 figures opened the front door and walked in. She was surprised that the alien figures were able to drive their truck pods. But then again, she shouldn't have been surprised. From everything that was going on, it was becoming clearer that the aliens had been around on Earth for a while, even years possibly. The thought made her stomach tie up in knots. How could they have allowed an alien species to be on Earth? It was a serious lapse in Earth's security. The problem was that humanity's divisions had given the alien species a leg up. The factions on this continent had been too embroiled in a bitter fight against each other. Would that now change with the appearance of an alien species? Arya wasn't sure if an alien species was enough to bring humanity together, at least on this continent. At least we now know how they transported whatever was in those crates, Arya muttered. The soldier then fast-forwarded the video footage until the two figures reappeared from the front door. This time they were carrying a long piece of something. The problem was that something was wrapped in a black cloth. Whatever it is, it's heavy, Cruz commented. Arya agreed. The two figures opened the back of the truck pod and placed the wrapped item onto it. This process was repeated several times, one for each of the crates. Are we able to identify the truck pod? Arya asked. Yes, I can see a partial identifier on the back of the truck pod, Cruz replied. I'll get my men to run it through the database. We should be able to find the owner of the truck pod. There's a chance the truck pod was stolen from the owner, the soldier added. Let's do the check first and see, Arya said. Cruz offered a single nod. Arya felt hope rising in her. The video footage had given them a significant lead. The identification of the truck pod could lead them to more information. Maybe they could even find the contents of those black crates, which might help them understand the objectives of the alien species. Chapter 29, Unknown Position, Eastern Plains. General Duncan raced across the harsh terrain. Monroe and the pilot were ahead of him. They had come to a quick decision to put as much distance as possible between them and the alien vessel. What's the status of the alien vessel? Duncan asked. It's slowed down, the pilot replied. Why? Monroe asked. The pilot shrugged. No way to tell. Maybe it lost track of us. Duncan refused to believe it. The Vazat were far more superior and cunning than they had expected. Slowing down their vessel had a purpose. Duncan just couldn't put a finger on it right now. I got an incoming missile, the pilot hollered. Duncan glanced around and noticed some boulders to the right. Over there now. They broke into a run and took cover behind the boulders. They were just in time. An explosion ripped near where they had just been standing. Oh my goodness, the pilot shouted. Sweat was dripping down Duncan's neck. That had been a close call. Obviously, the alien vessel had slowed down so that it could fire a missile at them. We can't stay here, Monroe said. Duncan agreed. They broke into another run and headed in the direction of more boulders. The landscape in this part of the harsh terrain had turned rocky. Many rock formations jutted out all around them, but running around wasn't a solution, especially if the aliens could detect them. Duncan came to a stop behind a rock formation that took the form of an arch. Is there any way to jam the detection? The pilot snapped his fingers. It might be possible. Give me a few moments. Duncan caught his breath as his eyes scanned the area. There was no sign of the alien vessel, but it was around, lurking about. They'll know by now that they didn't kill us, Monroe admitted. It won't take long for them to find us again. The pilot raised his fist. I think I got it. Switching it on now. What did you do? Monroe asked. I reconfigured the device to send out a jamming signal, the pilot replied. How will we know whether it's working or not? Monroe asked. Only one way to find out, Duncan said. He then walked out from behind the rock formation. It was a risk, a big one, but there was no faster way to determine if the jamming signal was working or not. The pilot and Monroe joined him. They stood exposed to the elements. If they detected us, we should hear or see a missile approaching us, the pilot said. Assuming they planned to use a missile a second time, Monroe countered. Duncan looked at the sky and folded his arms. The waiting part was difficult, but they still needed to determine if the jamming signal had worked. If it worked, it would buy them some time. A minute went by, then 2 minutes. I think it's safe to say the jamming signal is working, Monroe said. For now, Duncan replied. Once the aliens realized they were being jammed, Duncan was certain the aliens would figure out another way to find them. It was only a matter of time. We need to keep moving, Duncan announced. They resumed their journey with the pilot leading the way. Duncan didn't know how much time they had before the alien vessel found them again. Nonetheless, they had to use every second to their advantage. Chapter 30, Springfield Eastern Plains. Captain Area was seated in a nondescript transport pod along one end of a road in Springfield. Homes stood on either side of the road. The identification of the truck pod based on a partial set of numbers had been successful. Surprisingly, it had taken long for the soldiers working under Lieutenant Cruz to find out where the owner lived. Cruz turned to her. The owner of the truck pod is James Mullins. He lives down this road. Do we know anything about him? Area asked as she observed multiple other transport pods parked on either side of the road. Cruz had been careful in bringing in his unit. He had also notified the police chief Robertson of the situation, but asked them to stay away first. Robertson had agreed to Cruz's advice. Even if the local police showed up, Area didn't know what else they would be able to do. Mr. Mullins is just another member of the community, Cruz replied. Our records didn't indicate any arrests. Area frowned. Did Mr. Mullins report a lost truck pod? Not that we know of, Cruz replied. That itself complicated matters. Either Mr. Mullins had decided not to report his truck pod as stolen, or he was working with the alien species. The latter made no sense. Why would a human willingly work with the alien species? Area pushed those thoughts aside. There had to be a mistake. Cruz then began talking to his private comms link with his men and women. He turned to her. We have a bigger problem. What is it? The truck pod is parked outside Mr. Mullins' home. Area heaved a sigh. Do you think he's working with those who transported the items in the crates? Cruz asked. It's something we need to seriously consider, Area said. Is everyone in place? Cruz nodded. My guys tell me that Mr. Mullins is inside the home. Anyone else living with him? Area asked. He lives alone. That would help things. The last thing Area wanted was for innocents to get caught in the crossfire. One way or another, they were going to capture Mr. Mullins and find out what he knew of the use of his truck pod. Time to go, Area admitted. With that, Area opened the door of the transport pod and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The fresh air was welcome. When she was young, her father would always take her on hikes. Area loved the outdoors. It was a place where she felt the freest. Despite being confined to a United Alliance base, Area would often take drives out into the countryside in her off days. Those short trips reminded her of her younger days with her father. Those times had been great, until one day her father didn't want to take her on the trips anymore. No reason was given to her. He just felt it was enough. Area sighed. Life always came with its ups and downs. Area started walking down the sidewalk with Cruz. Her eyes scanned the other homes. Some of them had transport pods parked in their driveways. Some had their shades open. Area could assume prying eyes were watching what was going on outside. People who lived in such neighborhoods often knew when something had shifted. In today's case, it was the arrival of multiple transport pods. Although none of them bore the signature of the military, their presence would stick out like a sore thumb. It was inevitable. Cruz's body stiffened. What is it? Area asked. We got some movement inside Mr. Mullins' home. Chapter 31, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. Lucas peered deeper into the interior of the alien vessel. He and Glenn were still outside of it. Lucas exchanged a glance with Glenn, gripped his weapon tightly and took a step into the alien vessel. He found himself in a chamber with crates and other equipment. The air was cool. A corridor extended further into the vessel from the opposite end. Lucas motioned to Glenn, who shut the door, and they raced to either side of the corridor. Lucas's heart was pounding. They were probably the first ever human beings to step inside a Vazat alien vessel. He peeked down the corridor. On the far end, his eyes caught sight of the cockpit. Alongside the corridor were doors on either side. Lucas swallowed hard as he crept forward into the corridor. Reaching the first door on the left, he stopped. He could hear his own breathing. Was there a Vazat alien inside the compartment? If so, shouldn't they have heard of his approach? He swallowed hard as his hand went to the panel on the side of the compartment. He gently clicked on it. The door slid open with a slight hiss. Lucas jumped in front with his weapon in front of him. The compartment was empty. Only a bed, a table, and a chair stood inside. In fact, there was nothing else. Lucas frowned. He stepped back out into the corridor and approached the next compartment on his right. Again, he held his breath and did a mental countdown before pressing on the panel. The door slid open, and again it was an empty compartment. Lucas let out a deep breath. 2 compartments down, 2 more to go. A few minutes later, he stood in the spacious cockpit of the alien vessel. The remaining 2 compartments had also turned out to be empty. By now, Glenn had also joined him inside the cockpit. Whoa, this is amazing. Lucas agreed. The cockpit was slick with a set of controls and monitors from left to right. Alien symbols marked all the controls. Lucas then holstered his weapon and sat down at what he presumed was the pilot's seat. Does that mean this entire vessel was manned by a single alien? Glenn asked. It looks like that. How could the aliens hide such a vessel from all the factions and anyone else? Lucas shrugged. I don't think they've been using this vessel a lot. What changed then? Lucas' thoughts went back to the 30-year timeline. It had something to do with the figure of 30 years. There was something there. He could feel it in his gut. He just didn't know what it referred to. There would be enough time to try and find that out later. Not right now. His eyes scanned the cockpit console, studying the array of symbols. Glenn took a seat beside him. How do we start this vessel? Give me a moment. Fortunately, the console had symbols, some of whose purposes he might be able to guess. It was a risk, but they didn't have a choice. He needed to get this vessel up in the air. Waiting here was not an option, especially if the Vazat figured out that the alien flying this vessel had died. Once they got the vessel in the air, they could fly to the nearest United Alliance base. What if we blow up the vessel by accident? Glenn asked in a nervous tone. His VP was again distracting him. Lucas shook his head and kept his eyes fixed on the symbols. A symbol next to a big black button caught his attention. Lucas inhaled a sharp breath as he pressed on the button. Chapter 32, Unknown Position, Wiley Forest. 10 minutes had passed since Captain Williams, his lieutenant, and 2 United Alliance soldiers had left the United Alliance base. Williams was sympathetic to Lieutenant Marshall. His tasks ahead were massive. Williams estimated that over 20 soldiers had been killed in the attack by the alien species, and that was not even counting Captain Gainesville. The sheer number of dead were far worse than what had transpired at Williams' base. Marshall would need to spend a lot of time putting everything back together. If something like that had happened on Williams' base, he doubted Lieutenant Kane would also be up to the task. All this only increased Williams' suspicions that the alien had done it on purpose to keep the United Alliance base distracted. But the question was, from what? What was the alien hiding that it didn't want anyone discovering? Williams turned to Kane. Can we track it? Kane gave a nod. I believe so. A smile broke out on Williams' face. The alien had assumed all of them would be trying to fix the death and destruction at the United Alliance base. But the alien underestimated their resolve. Lead the way, Williams said. With that, he and the 2 soldiers followed Kane through the underbrush in the forest. For a while, they retraced their route through the forest until they started to deviate on a new route. Kane glanced at Williams, who acknowledged him. Despite their ability to track the alien, Williams kept his ears and eyes open for any traps. A little while later, Williams pulled out his device. It was only then that he realized he had a message from his base. Williams frowned. He should have checked his device earlier. The assault by the alien on the United Alliance base had distracted him. Williams clicked on his device and opened his inbox. He read the message. His heart began to pound. He blinked. Was he reading the message correctly? He read it a second time. There it was. His brother was looking for him. Duncan. After all these years, why was he looking for him now? Williams paused for a second in his trek before resuming it. The message about Duncan had caught him by surprise. The message was short but sounded urgent. Williams looked up at the towering trees around, lost in thought. Did his brother's message have anything to do with the alien attack? Williams hadn't considered that possibility until now. The attack on Captain Gainesville and his base would have been communicated across the United Alliance network. That was one thing Williams was sure of, because it was the same protocol for the coalition forces. Even then, it had been a long time since Williams had heard from his brother. So long that Williams had completely forgotten about his sibling. The falling out between him and his brother had been ugly during his father's funeral. The things that had been simmering between them had spilled out at the worst of times. It had caused such a commotion that other extended family members had to intervene and keep them apart. It had been bad. Something that William didn't want to remember. He wasn't proud of what he had done at that time. He didn't take all the blame. In those days, both he and Duncan were too hot-headed. After that, William had chosen to leave and enlist, turning his back on his family. There was nothing left there. Even today, he had no contact with any of his extended family members. It was for the best. Sir, we're getting a larger reading further ahead, Kane whispered. What kind of reading? Williams asked. According to my device, it appears there could be multiple aliens ahead of us. Chapter 33, Springfield, Eastern Plains. Captain Arya picked up her pace as they walked briskly down the sidewalk. The last thing she wanted was for them to lose Mr. Mullins. If the man was involved in helping the aliens, she needed to catch him and find the truth. It still disgusted her that a human being could be working together with an alien. Then again, it was possible that the aliens had taken control of a human and Mr. Mullins was forced to work for them against his will. That would ease her conscience. But nothing was off the table as they approached the home. Arya's eyes detected several soldiers hiding at the neighbor's fence. My men and women have surrounded the home, Cruz highlighted. Mr. Mullins isn't going anywhere today. Arya wasn't as confident as the lieutenant. Ever since she and the general had encountered the alien in Henderson, she couldn't take anything for granted. It still bothered her as to why Mr. Mullins would want to help an alien being. Was the alien blackmailing Mr. Mullins? All these thoughts drifted through her mind as she pulled out her weapon and stood on the other side of the home. We are ready, Captain, Cruz announced. It then dawned on her that the lieutenant and soldiers were waiting for her to give the command. She nodded and walked up to the front door. The shades were drawn, making it hard to see anything inside the home. I thought you mentioned some movement, Arya remarked. My men at the back noticed it, Cruz replied. Arya took up a position on one side of the door and motioned Cruz to take the other side. Arya's heart was thumping. It was unusual to be breaking into a civilian's home. She had never done such a thing. She gripped her weapon tightly and motioned to Cruz, who knocked on the door loudly. Mr. Mullins. There was no sound. Cruz repeated the actions. Again, nothing. Arya had enough of waiting for a response. Cruz kicked the door open, which slammed open with a bang. Arya peered deeper into the home. Cruz stepped in and she followed. They found themselves standing in a dimly lit corridor with the living room on the left. Arya crept forward, her weapon leveled in front of her. It was too quiet. Something was wrong. Cruz's men and women had already identified that Mr. Mullins was inside the home. But where was he? What was he doing? Arya flicked her eyes around the living room. She nudged Cruz, who jumped into the living room and scanned the area. A sound emerged from further down the home. Arya's eyes widened. Take cover. Arya dove into the living room as a streak of weapons fire roared at her. She rolled away. She glanced back. The front door was gone. Whoever had fired at them wanted to kill them. No doubt in her mind. Arya grimaced as she got to her feet and positioned herself against the wall. Cruz was still on the floor. The streaks of weapons fire were relentless. Stop firing, Mr. Mullins, Arya shouted. Get out of my home, a voice boomed. You have no authority to invade my home. By now, Cruz was on his feet. We knocked multiple times and you didn't answer. Silence. Mr. Mullins was stalling them. Mr. Mullins, put your weapon down, Arya said. We just came to talk to you. About what? Mr. Mullins demanded. Put your weapon down, Arya said, signaling to Cruz. No one is going to make me give up my weapon, Mr. Mullins shouted. Cruz raised his voice. Mr. Mullins, we're not here to arrest you. We just want to talk to you. Arya was getting frustrated with Mr. Mullins. Then the sound of breaking glass caught her attention. It was followed by a scream and a loud thud. Cruz's soldiers had executed the plan. Arya jumped out back into the corridor. There was a body on the floor. Cruz joined her as Arya sprinted over and knelt beside the body. She touched the body. Fortunately, the man was still alive. Two soldiers appeared from the rear of the home. Cruz motioned to his soldiers, get him up. The two soldiers pulled Mr. Mullins to his feet. The man shook his head and spat at them. How dare you come into my home and attack me? Cruz gave the man a cold stare. How dare you fire on my people? Mr. Mullins glared at him. Mr. Mullins, do you know why we are here? Arya asked, trying to bring the tension level down. You're the one who barged in here, Mr. Mullins scowled. Your truck pod was identified carrying several items away from a building recently, Arya said. My truck pod is available to transport items, Mr. Mullins said. That's how I make a living. Show him the footage, Arya ordered. Cruz shoved the video footage in front of the man. Who is this client? Mr. Mullins didn't say a word. Where did you get this from? Arya ignored his question. Is this your truck pod? It looks like many truck pods, Mr. Mullins sneered. Cruz pointed his weapon at the man. Answer the question. Yeah, it is, Mr. Mullins replied. It's not illegal to drive my truck pod for clients. It is if you're transporting illegal goods, Cruz countered. Mr. Mullins shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. Ariel noticed the sudden shift in the man's countenance. He was being evasive. She had seen such behavior one too many times before. It was always the same. Mr. Mullins was hiding something from her. She jabbed a finger at him. You know of the alien, don't you? Mr. Mullins' jaw dropped. Chapter 34, Gibson Desert, Eastern Plains. At first, there was no visible reaction from the cockpit in the alien vessel. Then a small hum began to fill the air. Glenn looked about. Where's that coming from? Lucas's eyes brightened. I think the engine's coming on. As if on cue, an assortment of lights switched on across the cockpit console. Glenn whistled. You did it, sir. His VP was getting ahead of himself. Lucas had only managed to start the engine. Chalk it up to luck. He continued to study the rest of the symbols. He then noticed one that displayed something akin to flight. He pressed on the button and a clicking sound followed. Then a pair of controls emerged from the console. Sir, you're 2 for 2. Lucas grinned. Now all he had to do was figure out how to manipulate the controls. He glanced at the two controls. It looked like those of a helipod, except for the additional buttons on the sides. Lucas shifted in the seat and put his fingers gently on the controls. He stole a sideways glance at Glenn, who had strapped himself in his seat. Lucas' fingers glided over the smooth controls. Ready? Lucas asked. Glenn offered a reluctant nod. Lucas pulled on the controls. The alien vessel lifted off the desert. Lucas felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins. Whoa, Glenn said. I can't believe you're flying it. The alien vessel continued to climb off the surface. Once they had reached a certain altitude off the surface, Lucas pushed the controls forward. The alien vessel lurched forward. Lucas couldn't stop smiling. He was flying an alien vessel. As he continued to navigate the vessel, Glenn leaned over the cockpit console. Do we know how to fire the weapons? Lucas shook his head. He realized he had made a mistake before taking off in the vessel. He should have at least identified the weapons control. If they encountered other vessels, human or alien, they would need to take evasive actions. Lucas slowed down the vessel as his eyes swept the console, looking for anything that matched the weapons. His gaze fell on an image that looked like it could relate to weapons. He pressed on it. Immediately, a holographic targeting screen appeared in front of him. Now we are talking, Glenn said with a smile. Lucas pressed on the controls and the vessel began to speed up again. Sir, what's that? Glenn asked. Lucas turned back to the targeting holo projection. A green icon had appeared on it. It wasn't too far from their current position. The icon was slowly moving. I think there's another vessel, Lucas mused. Another alien vessel? Glenn asked with a horrified expression. How many of them are there roaming about? Lucas shrugged. I'm going to follow it. Is that wise? Shouldn't we fly in the opposite direction? I mean, we don't want to engage in a firefight with another alien vessel, right? Glenn made a strong argument. Lucas was just getting used to operating this alien vessel. Even though he had figured out the weapon system on the vessel, he would still be no match for another alien vessel. The aliens in that vessel would also know the weaknesses of this vessel and use it to their advantage. Lucas struggled with the doubts, trying to take charge of his emotions. Despite that, he pushed on the controls. His gut instinct told him to follow the alien vessel. Chapter 35, Springfield, Eastern Plains. Captain Arya pressed the tip of a weapon against Mr. Mullins' right cheek. Am I correct? Sweat began to form on Mr. Mullins' face. His eyes darted between her and Lieutenant Cruz. Arya knew she was getting to him. She just needed to break him down. How dare you work with the aliens? Cruz scowled. Mr. Mullins remained silent. You are a traitor of the worst kind. Cruz continued, a traitor to humanity. Mr. Mullins shot him an ugly look. And what are you? You are part of a faction that continues to fight with the other factions. All the factions are selfish, only looking for their own needs. None of the factions want to meet halfway and unite. All they want to do is fight. We've been fighting for 3 years and there's no end in sight. Arya was taken aback by the venom spewing from the man's lips. It was obvious that Mr. Mullins harbored a lot of resentment against all the factions. Not a particular one, but all of them. Arya had heard of such people, but she had never met anyone until today. The first time Arya heard of the presence of such people, she had dismissed them as crazy, but she had never considered that these people, like Mr. Mullins, would venture out to cooperate with an alien group against all humanity. So, you aren't denying working with the aliens, Cruz asked. I did what I had to do, Mr. Mullins announced. Humanity has gone crazy with their disunity and infighting. I'm disgusted to be part of humanity. Do you hear yourself? Cruz asked. You're working with alien beings. They want to destroy us. I don't know anything about that, Mr. Mullins said. Arya was sickened to her stomach listening to Mr. Mullins and his beliefs. The alien species had been successful in brainwashing people like Mr. Mullins. The danger was that Arya didn't know how many more people shared Mr. Mullins' sentiments, but she was getting ahead of herself. She needed to focus on the pressing matter. What did you transport in your truck pod? Arya demanded. Silence. Arya punched his stomach with the butt of her weapon. Answer me. Were they weapons? Cruz asked. Mr. Mullins shrugged. I just transported whatever they wanted. I didn't ask any questions. What were they? Arya repeated. Silence. She then pulled out a knife and pressed it against his left eye. If you don't tell me what I need to know, I'm going to take out that eye. A horrified expression swept Mr. Mullins' eyes. You wouldn't dare do that. For a traitor, I would make you suffer, Arya warned. I don't believe you, Mr. Mullins said. Arya pressed the knife edge right beneath his eyelid. Test me. Mr. Mullins' shoulders slumped. I transported some kind of communications equipment for them. That's all. They didn't tell me it, but I managed to look under the cover when they weren't around. I think they're trying to build a comms tower. Where did you transport it to? Arya asked. I drove it to the edge of Wiley Forest, Mr. Mullins replied. That's all I know. I unloaded it there and left. Arya believed the man and motioned for Cruz and his men to take him away. She then stood aside, opened the comms to the United Alliance base and relayed the information. She instructed everyone to be on high alert for a comms tower being built by unknown figures. If the alien beings were setting up a comms tower, it could only mean one thing. They were trying to communicate with their own kind outside of Earth. Arya didn't have to guess for what purpose. Most likely the aliens were calling in more of their kind to head to Earth. They couldn't let that happen. Chapter 36, Unknown Position, Eastern Plains. The pilot turned to Duncan. His expression said it all. What's wrong? Duncan asked. My device just shut down, the pilot replied. It ran out of power. Which means the jamming signal's also gone, right? Monroe asked. The pilot nodded with a pale face. Run, Duncan ordered. There was nothing else they could do. Duncan and the rest broke into a sprint down the harsh terrain. It was foolhardy to think they could outrun an alien vessel, but staying in one position was also out of the question. As they kept running, the first explosion ripped along the surface. Their turn hiding from the alien vessel had come to an end. Duncan's eyes scanned ahead, looking for anything to take cover behind, at least temporarily. He then spotted a cave on the left at the bottom of a hill. Duncan pointed at the cave. Over there, now. Everyone ran towards the cave. Although the cave wouldn't shield them from the alien vessel's sensors, it would give them a bit of respite to regroup. Reaching the cave, Duncan stepped inside and leaned against the wall. His pilot turned and stared out of the mouth of the cave. I don't see the vessel. It's out there, Monroe insisted. How long will it take them to find us here? Not too long, the pilot replied. As if on cue, an explosion ripped to the left of the cave mouth. Dust and debris shot up into the air. Monroe coughed as he wiped away the dust. Duncan grimaced. They wouldn't be able to stay too long inside this cave. However, it was still better than running in the open. If they kept running, the alien vessel would be able to easily shoot them down. I don't think we can leave this cave, Monroe commented. I see the vessel, the pilot announced. Duncan narrowed his eyes. In the distance, a sleek vessel came into his view. "Why is it moving slowly?" Monroe asked. "I don't know," the pilot replied. "The alien vessel might think we set a trap." Then another explosion ripped along the surface. "This one closer than the previous one. They're trying to flush us out into the open," Monroe said. Duncan agreed. "After a while they'll know we aren't taking their bait," the pilot said. Duncan turned back and looked into the cave. From his vantage point he could see the end of the cave. This cave was a small one. If the alien vessel continued firing at them, it might cause a cave-in, forcing them to be trapped inside this cave. If that happened, they would eventually die here. "General, what's our move?" Monroe asked. "Sir, I got a second vessel approaching the area," the pilot announced. "One of ours?" Duncan asked. The pilot paused for a long moment. "No, it's another alien vessel." "What?" Monroe hollered. One alien vessel had already been a challenge. With two alien vessels, Duncan didn't know what other options they had left. Chapter 37. Unknown Position. Wily Forest. Captain Williams crouched behind some trees and waited. Kane was checking his device again, and the two soldiers were hiding behind some bushes. As Williams waited, his thoughts again drifted to his brother Duncan. This wasn't the time to think of him. Williams tried to shake it off, but the thoughts were stubborn. He regretted checking his messages at the wrong time. He gritted his teeth. Why did Duncan have to send him a message now, especially after all these years? Duncan had a chance to reach out to him for years, but that never happened. Why of all days today? Williams continued to wrestle with his thoughts. However, he knew he shouldn't. He needed to be alert and not distracted by the past. They were deep in the forest and far away from any help. Kane turned to him. "According to my scans, I count 3 aliens ahead of us." "Are they moving?" Williams asked. Kane shook his head. "They appear to be stationary." Williams peeked from behind the trees. In the distance there was a faint light. That had to be the 3 aliens. "What are they doing?" Kane asked. "We can't tell from here," Williams replied. "We need to get closer." Kane and the 2 soldiers acknowledged him. Williams then turned to the left and crept forward, keeping his eyes on the faint light. As they circled towards the left, the faint light didn't move. The 3 aliens were busy doing something in the middle of the forest. Williams needed to find out what they were doing. It had to be significant. It also proved that the alien assault on the United Alliance base had been a distraction. That alien had wanted them to stay away from this part of the forest. By bringing them to a United Alliance base, the alien had effectively played them. Williams was irritated with himself for falling for the distraction. As they kept moving, Williams was again faced with the memories of his brother, Duncan. He didn't want to think of Duncan. Not now. For years, Williams had been able to keep his past away from him. He had successfully buried it so deep that he had forgotten about his brother and family. One message had brought everything back to the forefront. Williams came to a stop behind a few more trees. He crouched down and glanced ahead. He had a clear line of sight to the 3 aliens. There was some equipment lying around them. The 3 aliens were studying the equipment. "What are they doing?" Kane whispered. "It looks like they're setting up something," Williams replied. "I need to get closer." "Sir, that's too risky," Kane cautioned. "If they spot us here, we'll have to engage them. I don't know about you, but we already had a lot of resistance against 1 alien. 3 would be more difficult." His lieutenant was right. But even then, Williams couldn't just wait around. Without knowing what the aliens were building, they were taking a huge risk. "What if they're building a weapon?" Williams counted. Kane grimaced. "That's the problem," Williams said. "I'm going to try and get closer. Everyone else stays here." "Sir, I don't think that's a good idea," Kane countered. "I noted your objection," Williams said. Kane sighed as Williams holstered his weapon and started inching forward. He got on his hands and knees and crawled closer to the position where the 3 aliens were busy doing something. Every few seconds, Williams stopped and flicked his eyes about. Then he got to a point behind a log where he couldn't make any further progress. If he tried, he would be detected by the 3 aliens. By now, the 3 aliens had placed some of the equipment upright. From this angle, the equipment didn't look like a weapon. A buzz on Williams' device distracted him. He frowned. Who was it now? He looked down at his device. It was a comms from Lieutenant Marshall. Williams was tempted to ignore it, but he shouldn't. He pulled out his device from his pocket, clicked on it, and studied the message. His eyes widened. Report that aliens have transported some kind of equipment from Springfield. They may be trying to build a comms tower. Need to find and destroy ASAP. Williams looked at the message again and then turned his attention to the three aliens. How the heck had the aliens transported this equipment all the way to this part of Wiley Forest? That was something to ponder on for another time. Not now. Williams couldn't dismiss the urgency of the message. What he was witnessing now had to be the same comms equipment. It couldn't be a coincidence. Williams typed a message to Lieutenant Kane to inform him of the status and his plans. Once Williams received an acknowledgement from Kane, he pocketed his device and pulled out several grenades. He hoped Kane and the two soldiers would do their part in the plan. He did a mental countdown. 3, 2, 1. Williams hurled the grenades toward the three aliens and the partially established comms tower. Explosions ripped across the trees. Two aliens were thrown into the air while the third ducked. But that hadn't been the focus of the attack. Williams had targeted the comms tower. He glanced at it and smiled. It was destroyed. Streaks of weapons fire lit up the forest. Chapter 38, Unknown Position, Eastern Plains. Does the other vessel know we are behind them? Glenn asked. I can't tell, Lucas replied. Then a beep arose from the console. What was that? Glenn asked. I think the alien vessel is trying to comms with us. Lucas chose to ignore the beep. The longer we don't respond, the more suspicious they will become, Glenn remarked. I'm aware of that, but that vessel is firing at someone near a hill. We need to stop them. Lucas navigated the alien vessel slightly until his targeting screen was lined up. They're firing again, Glenn observed. A sense of urgency caught Lucas. He didn't have to guess who the alien vessel was firing at. It had to be humans. He needed to stop the attack and save them. Lucas pressed on the buttons on his controls. Whoa! Two contrails of missiles shot out of the alien vessel. The alien vessel is moving, Glenn hollered. It had been expected. Lucas assumed that the alien vessel had been monitoring their arrival. Lucas fired again, but this time at an angle. Although the alien vessel had been able to dodge the first round of missiles, they weren't successful against the next wave of missiles. Both missiles hit the hull of the alien vessel. Glenn pumped his fist. We got it. Despite Glenn's confident tone, the alien vessel in front of them hadn't exploded or crashed into the ground. Instead, it was still moving, but a bit more slowly. Then the alien vessel lurched forward and sped away. How? Glenn's voice trailed off. Lucas shook his head in dismay. In a few seconds, the alien vessel had disappeared. Despite taking direct hits from their missiles, the alien vessel had been able to escape. I'm bringing our vessel down, Lucas announced. He then pulled on the controls and their vessel landed with a soft thud on the desert floor. Lucas unstrapped himself. I want to see who we saved out there. I hope they're still alive, Glenn remarked. The thought had crossed Lucas's mind, but he had the feeling the humans who had been hiding from the alien vessel were still alive. If not, it would make no sense why the alien vessel had been firing on the hill. Lucas opened the rear door and stepped out into the harsh terrain. The hot air smacked him on the face as he walked about the alien vessel and headed towards the hill. In the distance, Lucas caught sight of several men walking towards them. His face brightened when he recognized one of them. General Duncan. I don't believe it, Lucas said. Duncan smiled. Neither do I. Thank you for coming to our rescue. I don't know how much longer we would have lasted out here. My pleasure, General, Lucas smiled, introducing Glenn, and Duncan introducing Sergeant Monroe and the pilot. Did you fly this? The pilot asked in disbelief. In another lifetime, Lucas had a short military career, Duncan remarked. The pilot nodded. How does it fly? Lucas shrugged. It takes a bit of time to get used to it, but I hope we can learn more about the Vazat aliens from this vessel. Duncan nodded. I'll need you to fly this back to my base. I'll get my men and women to study and examine it. What about the other alien vessel? Monroe asked. We did hit it, but I don't know if it had a shield, Lucas said. I'd expect they had a shield of some kind which helped them escape, Duncan mused. I want to get back to the base. With that, they all headed back into the alien vessel. Chapter 39, Unknown Position Wiley Forest. Captain Williams had his back against a towering tree. He didn't have a visual on the three aliens, but the relentless bursts of weapons fire told him they were around. Williams flicked his eyes about. He also couldn't identify where Lieutenant Kane and the two soldiers were. Williams spoke into his comms. Lieutenant, where are you? Sir, we are north of the original position where the aliens were, Kane whispered. Do you see them? Williams asked. We have a visual on one of them, Kane replied. We are firing on that one. The sound of weapons fire continued unabated. Williams wiped the sweat off his brow. He peeked out, fired his weapon, and crawled away to another tree. A barrage of enemy weapons fire slammed into a tree he had been earlier hiding behind. Williams swallowed hard. The aliens were focused on killing them all. He was sure destroying the aliens' comms tower had been a big blow to them. A human voice screamed. Williams suppressed a sigh. One of his men had been hit. Williams listened for any sounds from the aliens. We lost one, Kane muttered through Williams' comms link. Sir, I think I see an alien approaching your position. Williams' body stiffened. A sound reached his ears. The alien was close by. Williams flicked his eyes about. He couldn't stay here. He got to his feet and raised the head. Weapons fire shot out behind him. Williams tripped on something and fell to the ground. His weapon went flying off his hands. Williams got on his back, but before he could do anything, a tall male alien was standing in front of him. You humans have caused too much trouble for us, the alien scowled. Williams was surprised the alien wanted to talk. Why are you here? How did you know about this location? The alien demanded, shifting the weapon in his hands. Williams kept silent. The only reason the alien hadn't killed him yet was because it wanted information from him. Who sent you? Williams asked, his eyes darting to the left and to the right. He spotted his weapon on the grass, but he was too far from it. If he even attempted to get the weapon, the alien would kill him. We've always been here, the alien snickered. You will pay for destroying our equipment. What do you want from us? Williams inquired. The alien opened its mouth and laughed. Seeing the alien's sharp teeth sent shivers down Williams' spine. Those teeth could rip his skin into pieces, even to the bone. You'll find out in time to come, the alien replied. But now it's your time to... Then multiple weapons fire hit the alien across its body. The alien staggered backwards from the force of the attack. That was the opening Williams had been looking for. He rolled away and hid behind the underbrush. Williams grabbed his weapon and aimed it at the alien, but the alien was gone. Captain, a voice boomed from behind him. Williams turned back and relief swept his expression. It was Lieutenant Marshall and his men. Prior to blowing up the alien's comms tower, Williams had sent an urgent message asking for reinforcements. He hadn't gotten a reply, yet now he was grateful that Marshall had arrived with the reinforcements. Marshall walked up to him and extended his hands. Captain, are you okay? Williams grabbed his hand and got to his feet. I'm alive thanks to you. We got here right before you were cornered by the alien, Marshall said. We watched the alien talking to you and then fired on it. Williams glanced around as Kane and the remaining soldier walked towards him. Have they all disappeared? Kane gave a reluctant nod. They're gone. Williams smoothed his uniform and turned to Marshall. Get your men and women to comb the area and take back anything left for analysis. Yes, Captain, Marshall replied. Once Marshall left his side, Kane looked at Williams. What did the alien say? Williams shared the essence of his conversation with the alien. Do you believe it? Kane asked. Williams shrugged. He didn't know what to believe, but he had caught sight of the alien's resolve. The aliens were up to something, and this setback wasn't going to deter them. Chapter 40, Interrogation Room, United Alliance 1. General Duncan looked through the glass into the interrogation room. Mr. Mullins sat inside in shackles. There was one armed soldier at the door. The door behind Duncan opened and Captain Arias stepped in. I read the file on Mr. Mullins, Duncan said. There's nothing of significance that we can use. He's just your average guy. who holds a serious grudge against the factions and the war, Arya said. Although I'm not surprised by his feelings against the factions, that's the only thing we know for certain. You mean there are others like that? Arya asked. Unfortunately, their numbers have been growing, but that's not our focus today. What I want to know is how he got entangled with the Vazat aliens. He's been quite silent on it. We tried asking him that back at his home, but he didn't say a word. Are we searching his home? Yes, we got a warrant to do a search, Arya replied. My men and women are combing every inch of the home, looking for any evidence of his contact with the Vazat. Duncan frowned. My biggest worry is what attracted the Vazat aliens to Mr. Mullins. The man doesn't stand out for any reason, except for his grudge against the factions, which I believe the Vazat aliens exploited. But to do that, they would have needed to have Mr. Mullins under observation. It makes sense and is possible, considering the aliens have been around for years on our planet. Arya looked at him in disbelief. Duncan turned his attention back to Mr. Mullins. We're going to have to interrogate him until he breaks. The Vazat have alien vessels roaming around our continent, but we don't even know how many of them are flying about. It also appears they can avoid our radar systems. That last statement sent shivers down Duncan's spine. The engineer studying the alien vessel that Lucas had stolen had been able to tell him with relative certainty that their radars couldn't detect the vessel. The implication was astonishing. The Vazat aliens could have their vessel right outside this base and he wouldn't even know of it. Until it was too late. I'm working on finding a way to beef up our eyes on the perimeter area, admitted. Do that, I think we need to fall back on traditional ways. Get as many eyes as possible around the base. I don't think the Vazat aliens will be too happy that we stole one of their vessels. Yes, sir. Duncan had an uneasy feeling that the Vazat would seek revenge for what Lucas had been able to do, despite that Lucas had really exceeded his expectations. What about the stuff from Lucas's father's secret chamber? We sent a few people down there to recover whatever we could, Arya replied. Duncan gave a single nod. That still leaves Mr. Mullins. He must have a way to contact the Vazat. We checked his phone, but there was nothing unusual on it. Duncan suspected Mr. Mullins may have wiped his phone clean of any suspicious activity. Do we have our forensics people examining the phone? They're working on it. Captain, join me as I need to visit one of our bases, Duncan said. He had been en route to get to the base when the Vazat had attacked his convoy. Now it was time to head there and find out what had happened. Chapter 41, United Alliance 14 beside Wiley Forest. Duncan stepped off the helipod with Captain Arya, his boots hitting the tarmac with a muted thud. The helipod's engine swiftly came to an abrupt stop. As the cold wind bit into Duncan's uniform, he took in his surroundings in stunned silence. The chaotic scene before him was only a harbinger of what had transpired here. Weapons fire had marked multiple buildings of this fledgling base. Twisted metal was everywhere. Small whiffs of smoke still rose from the crumpled remains of the transport pods. The Vazat alien had torn through the base. The base would need some time to recover from the destruction. Duncan's eyes scanned the wreckage. He had expected a lot of damage, but not like this. He could see the scorch marks where the alien had struck. I can't believe one Vazat alien did all this, Arya muttered. It was apparent that the Vazat aliens were powerful. The scene in front of me was clear evidence of it. Duncan would need to report back his observations to the United Alliance Council. The general in charge of this section was not available due to personal medical reasons. That was all the United Alliance Council had been able to tell him. The council's spokesperson hadn't wanted to elaborate, which was expected. Because of that, Duncan had been called in to handle the situation. It was also because the United Alliance Council realized that Duncan had the most experience with the Vazat aliens. I don't think another faction could inflict such damage, Arya observed. Duncan clenched his jaw, the weight of the carnage sinking into his chest. The attack on his new base wasn't just a military setback. It was the start of something far darker. A man, grim-faced and battered, walked up to them and saluted him. General Duncan, my name is Lieutenant Marshall. I'm currently the highest ranking officer at this base. Duncan returned the salute, at ease. He had read the preliminary reports that Captain Gainesville had been killed in the line of fire by the Vazat aliens. It was a huge loss. Gainesville was a decorated captain in the United Alliance. In the end, he had fallen into an alien trap. The loss of Gainesville would be felt throughout the United Alliance. I understand there's a coalition forces captain here who helped you, Duncan commented. Marshall gave a single nod. Yes, I've arranged a meeting room for you to meet him. Let me take you to him. Duncan and Arya followed Marshall through the chaos in the base. The evidence of the alien assault on the base was everywhere. His boots crunched against the debris. Several bodies were still covered by white cloth. Duncan frowned. It was impossible to tell if those dead soldiers had even stood a chance. Most likely not. How many soldiers did we lose here? At last count over 30 of them, Marshall replied, and there's many more who were injured. Duncan's eyes widened. That was a significant number for an attack away from the front lines. Did you call in for more medics? Yes, sir, Marshall replied. A few have already flown in and are treating the injured. We also converted one of the training buildings into a makeshift medical chamber. Duncan stepped into a building, walked down a corridor, and stepped into a room. Two men were staring out the window. Captain, this is General Marshall started. One of the men turned around. Duncan inhaled a sharp breath. He couldn't believe his eyes. Was this some trick? But he knew it wasn't. Standing in front of Duncan was his brother, Captain Williams. Of all people, here at this base. Duncan Williams said with a smile, I know the General Lieutenant. Marshall looked on in confusion. Duncan caught sight of Arya also looking confused. Nonetheless, Duncan didn't skip a beat. He knew how to handle complicated and awkward situations. Although this one was up there as the worst. Everyone, could you give me and Captain Williams some time alone? Everyone acknowledged and left the room. Williams glanced at him. It's been a long time, brother. Duncan grimaced. When he had flown over to the base, he hadn't thought much about his brother. Although Duncan hadn't received any reply from Williams, he had put it aside. Because of the Vazat. Now, Duncan realized his brother had been the one who had come to the aid of the United Alliance. Duncan gestured to his brother, who sat down opposite him. Chapter 42, Granite Valley, Central Plains. One of the male Vazat aliens looked at a table in front of him. Three other aliens sat before him. The three had just returned from Wiley Forest where their attempt to set up a comms tower had failed, all because of the humans. The pesky humans were becoming a problem. Captain Sooty, as we have failed, we are ready for the consequences, one of the aliens admitted. Your failure is noted, Torin, Sooty scowled, but there will be no consequences for now. Torin looked at him mouth wide open before he closed it again. The reality was that Sooty didn't have the luxury of imprisoning his kind. There were too little of them on Earth. He needed to keep them motivated until the rest of his kind came to this planet. We have underestimated the resistance by the humans, Sooty admitted. They're becoming a formidable challenge to the Ment Treaty. Every time Sooty talked about the Ment Treaty that was agreed upon by Tudor Ment and the Vazat, it left a bitter taste in his mouth. He couldn't understand why his superior had agreed to it. It was a serious failing on the part of the Vazat species. I heard the humans took one of our vessels, Torin said. Lucas Ment is as problematic as his father, Sooty scowled. Torin's eyes widened. It was him who stole our vessel. Sooty had never anticipated that Tudor's son would be able to take control of one of their vessels. With the loss of the vessel, the humans would be able to learn and use some of the Vazat technology. Sooty nodded. The human got lucky, nothing more. We won't let that happen again. I'll deal with Lucas Ment separately. He would need to handle the younger Ment, because if not, the Supreme Leader would question his capabilities. The last thing Sooty wanted was to speak in front of the Supreme Leader. It was common knowledge that most Vazat who were called before the Supreme Leader didn't survive. We should have never trusted his father, Torin said. It was a deal the Vazat made with him, Sooty replied. There was no choice then, and we have abided by it all these years. But the deal's period has expired. Now it's time for us to arise. What about the comms tower, Torin asked. That's a minor setback. Sooty smiled, flashing his sharp teeth. Our friends will help us get back on track. I have sent you new orders to your devices. Study them carefully. The three aliens nodded, stood, and left the room. Sooty walked over to the window and glanced at the valley. The humans may have stopped them temporarily, but the Vazat would prevail, as they had always done on other worlds. Earth was no different. Humanity was a weak species. Their disunity and faction wars were a timely advantage to the Vazat. Sooty would make sure to use that against the human species. The humans wouldn't be able to stop what was coming. The end.